Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
All right, everybody, player moves. So we have several basic moves in Stonetop, which aren't all that different from Daggerheart, Dungeon World, and they've basically kind of been slightly tweaked and slightly reorganized. So we've got our, of course, Defy Danger, our generic all-purpose something bad's happening, can you deal with it move that ties to all 6 of our stats. We also have, of course, the generic aid move, a move that I typically do not like. However, it is used, of course, to assist people. We'll get to that in a second. Oh, did we just jump right into it? Well, why would we be doing that? Because we still have like 900 pages to go. We will never be done. Yeah. Welcome, everybody, to the Night's Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda. Today, we're going to be continuing our I mean, at this point, this series is going to, we're approaching the day mark here, right? We're approaching 24 hours. So, and we're not even through the first book. So, yeah. We got a lot to do. In any case, welcome, everyone. We're going to get into it just because I don't want this to be like a ridiculously long stream. However, if you do want to support the Stone Hype train, keep going. Of course, you can do that with our super chats. You can also drop a tip. We have a tip goal, $50. Not that will stop the Stone Hype. It'll merely interrupt it, and we'll take a first look at another game just to kind of break it up a little bit. What's up, Ron Rittner? Hey, everybody. Let's give a shout out to Ron Rittner. It is indeed famous last words. Also, if there's a little bit of a buzz in the background, it's because I have a fan going. It's not enough to turn on the AC, but it's getting a little warm here. Hey, Scotty F comes in with a massive $50 super chat right off the rip. Scotty F doing what Scotty F does, keeping the channel alive. Thank you, buddy. Keeps the Stone Hype train going. You know, now again, we did hit our goal, so I am committed to it. However, you know, it's been a long haul, and we've got more to go. Thank you, Scotty F. Appreciate you so much. Well, there we go. Good. We're off to a great start, and here we go. It's going to be fantastic. Oh, Globster Roll says, quick, stop the Stone Hype.
Globster Roll tipped $50. Quick, stop the Stone
All right.
Hype.
You saw it here. You saw it first. Sunday night, we will probably... We'll take a quick detour, and maybe we'll do another first look on Sunday. So we'll interrupt. Now Stone Hype will keep going, but we'll keep it going. Hey, look at that! Look at that! And now we can just enjoy the public. The tips are met. Let's go. We can do it really well. Hey, what's up, Plus One XP? So Plus One XP, by the way, is awesome. If you're a Patreon member, you saw an interview that I did with the Plus One XP folks over at Gen Con. But Plus One XP says, I don't think we've publicly announced it yet, but the full Stonetop team, including Lucy, that's the one and only artist that we've been sort of, loving so much, will be at Gen Con. That's awesome. That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, the question Plus One XP is, are you going to be doing games? Or are they just there to, hang out and shoot the shit? So that's awesome. All right. So basic moves are the cornerstone of any PBTA game. They are going to be what gets triggered the most. And there's been a lot of debate about why the term move is a bad term. And I think I don't like it. And of course, Vincent Baker created it, whatever, we've stuck with it. And the reason I don't like moves is because I'm a big believer in resonance, and people associate, words mean things and people associate things. When we think about a game of chess, okay, you look at it, someone teaches you the chess and they say, well, I'm going to teach you the moves. Right? The queen moves like this, the bishop moves like this, the knight moves like this. And you're taught to think in terms of what moves are available to me. What am I allowed to do? Especially when it comes to games. Okay? On your turn, you can make a move. Okay? What's the list of moves? So I think we really associate moves as being this sort of prescriptive list of, these are the buttons that are on your hotbar. And that, I think, is slightly problematic because that's not the way you should be thinking about PBTA. Now, I say this with a caveat, which is to say that's like PBTA 101. PBTA 201 okay, is you should be looking at your moves and you should be choosing your moves because they're a way that the game is communicating to you of saying, hey, these are the things that we think are really, cool and we think they're important and we love rolling dice and coming up with, cool new directions for the game. And it's totally reasonable that you should choose moves and add them to your playbook because you want them to trigger. But at a base level, I think it does more harm than good, is all I'm going to say. Because the truth of the matter is, moves aren't something you do. They are something that triggers. The only thing you do in Powered by the Apocalypse is have a conversation and describe what your character is doing. That may trigger a move to occur, but moves are definitely not the limit of what you can do, nor is anything you do limited to your moves. Okay. So sweet. Plus One XP says we're trying to get some games going and a panel on the schedule. Fantastic. Plus One XP. I would hope to be there. Apparently, I'm going to be running a lot of AV at Gen Con for Professor DM, but I'm going to try to make some stuff of that. This would be really cool to hear what they have to say about it. Jake says Vincent Baker, of course, one of the authors of Apocalypse World and arguably the father of PBTA. I mean, not arguably, it is the father of PBTA. Vincent was just saying on Blue Sky that he thinks people should use a different term other than moves, and he's used several different ones throughout some other designs. Epiphany Rambler, great name, by the way, says, I'm sure we've heard from Vincent why he originally named it moves, but I've never come across it. And Goldacat says, I like the word cues. And Scotty says, I think that there was some thought that it moves the fiction forward, which is, but okay, but anything moves the fiction forward, right? A GM move can move. I guess it's a move. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It is tough. I mean, is everything a move? Sort of no, yes, no. I don't know. That's the way I think of them, Melnick. The reason why is because, to really complicate it, some moves don't actually trigger, right? Some moves just make something true, which means that they're not really even a move, right? It's not even like what we would consider to be a button on your hotbar, right? It's just a thing that is now universally true about your character. Anyways, audio-visual, like, running audio and running cameras. Okay. Hey, thank you for the Prime subby, Ignorino. As a reminder, by the way, for everybody, if you do want to support this channel and, maybe money's tight, which is totally fine. I understand it. You can support us for free over at twitch.tv/Knights of Ice Call. We also stream over on Twitch. You get a Prime sub for free every month, and you can use it on this channel or any channel, and we'd appreciate it. Right, exactly. That's what I was trying to say, TS Agent, right? Player narration that doesn't trigger moves also moves the fiction forward. That's exactly correct. All right, so basic moves. Again, these are going to be these are going to be the bedrock for which your game is based upon. Now, biggest mistake people make, triggering too many moves, right? Not everything you do has to trigger a move. But if a move triggers, you need to roll the move, right? So it has a transitive property, right? Which that's the game designer math term. The PBTA term is to do it, and if you do it, you did it. Okay, which is to say, if your character is jumping out of an exploding building, they are defying danger. And if your character is rolling defying danger, there must be some danger that they are defying. If a GM makes you roll defy danger, that is not correct, because you need to do something in the fiction that causes that move to trigger. So defy danger is sort of the generic bedrock move. One of the things that Dungeon World did that is different from Apocalypse World, which I really like, is in Apocalypse World, defy danger, which is called act under fire, is only tied to a single stat. I think it's cool. In our game of Stonetop, as in Dungeon World, defy danger can be used with any of the 6 traditional D&D attributes. So it really is a question of the player is going to describe how they're defying the danger. We'll roll with that statistic, depending on how the fiction connects to what stat it works best. All right. Then we get one move for every attribute. Okay. So we get clash, which is basically your melee move. And that, of course, ties to strength. We get defend, which is kind of your defensive, protect somebody move, tied to constitution. We get know things, which of course is tied to intelligence. Let fly, which is shooting a ranged weapon, tied to dexterity. Persuade, 2 variations of it, tied to charisma. And seek insight, right? That's sort of a combination of more really of a combination of perception and sense motive, if we're kind of using those terms. It's about gaining information about what's going on in the scene, and even in a meta kind of way, which can be very powerful. And we skipped interfere, but interfere and aid are kind of the, two sides of the same coin, which is a way to affect other people's mechanics. Yeah, I mean, I love the terminology which Thirsty Sword Lesbians uses, Woodland Fellowship, which is called them upbeats, mixed beats, and downbeats. But again, you can have an important story beat and have it not trigger a move. So it's kind of, But anyways. And then we have some special moves to be considered. One is advantage and disadvantage, burn brightly, which allows you to potentially expend XP to enhance your performance. The end of session move and death's door. Realistically, what moves is a mechanical intersection. That's all a move really is. It is a mechanic that does something to the game. That's what a move is. So another way to describe a mechanic is it's a mechanic, right? So like because we think about the fiction triggering defend when my character raises their shield in order to withstand the withering dragon fire. But another move is end of session, right? Which is clearly not tied to the fiction in any sort of meaningful way. But it does have mechanical consequences. And the other thing that I think is that in PBTA is moves aren't optional. Okay? Like if someone reaches 0 hit points, you are going to do the death's door move. If you reach the end of the session, you are going to do the end of session move. I mean, I might be being a little bit heavy-handed about this, but there is this idea in most PBTA games, spoken or unspoken, which is that this is not like up to the GM, right? It doesn't have that sort of like rule 0. If something, now granted, of course, you can, you can trigger. You can change the rules to your game, of course, as you wish. But at the end of the day, you really have to sort of, you're playing this game and you're accepting that these rules are how you are going to govern the play of behavior. And if you are going to change one of these moves, you should do so carefully with consideration and, definitely deliberately and in advance, not just, on the fly. So let's get into the moves. All right. Moves are so everything that I just told you is written here really well in the book, of course. Every move has a trigger. The trigger is almost always fictional. Of course, it would be too easy if it was just fictional. Players might describe a move intentionally, or they might say something that they didn't mean to describe the trigger that happens. Okay, so which is the other classic thing, which is if a character is like, if I'm describing how you're in the middle of a citywide battle, and a character's like, okay, I'm going to race across town and reach the resistance outpost, and I was like, okay, well the city is full of fighting and fires and battles and skirmishes. If you're racing across town and not getting involved in all that, you're gonna have to defy danger. And someone goes, no, I don't want to do that. And you're like, okay, well, you don't have to, but then you need to describe what you're doing something differently, because in my mind, you are literally defying the danger, and thus that move must trigger. So again, now that's fine. We can take a step back. It's not about gotchas. It's not about like, haha, you have to roll now, bitch. No, it's having that conversation, but realizing that if something is, triggering, you need to roll for it. Okay. But again, to do it, do it. The opposite is also true. If they do it, they have to do it. So literally what I was just talking about. Okay. And again, someone can back out, I didn't realize I was gonna have to roll if I want to just get across town. Then I don't want to do that. Okay, cool. Come up with a different approach then. And again, it's everyone's job. It's not just the GM's job. Okay. Lazy players, I hate to say it, need not apply for PBTA. It's a game that I wouldn't even say encourages or rewards. I would say it requires that everyone be an active listener, that everyone be engaged. It is not about just like sitting back and letting the not only letting the narrative come to you, but also just letting the management of the game come to you. It is not a hands-off game. It asks you to lean in. So we know what we do. We roll 2d6. We add our stat, and then the generic result is on a 10 or higher, you get a strong hit. On a 7 through 9, you get a weak hit, and on a 6 or less, it's a miss, which means you mark an experience point, and you, the GM, make a hard GM move. Okay. Now we'll have to get to this later, or I'm sorry, we'll have to kind of maybe filter back to this. One of the ideas in classic Dungeon World is that you can make as hard of a move as you want. But that, this seems to indicate that you must make a hard move. I don't necessarily know that that is true, but we'll see that here. But anyways, but maybe they do. We have advantage and disadvantage. This is sort of a new PBTA tech that came out like 10 years ago, but like in some of the homebrews and hacks that were popular on Google+, which is basically 3d6 drop low or 3d6 drop high. I like it. I use it a lot. So here is our first move, Defy Danger. And basically, when danger looms, you notice that a lot of these moves are going to be set up as a trigger, right? When this happens, then this happens, right? So when danger looms, the stakes are high, and you do something chancy, roll. On a 10 or higher, you do it without any, problems or issues. On a 7 through 9, you can do it, but the GM will present a lesser success, a cost, or a consequence. Now, if something's both dangerous, but another move would also trigger, then that other move typically will take precedence, right? So Defy Danger is sort of a catch-all move, right? Like, if it feels like they're doing something dangerous, and they're in a dangerous situation, and there's a lot of stuff at stake, all right, and success is not guaranteed, or there's no hope of success, then we're rolling Defy Danger. But if something else would more apply, then we're going to do that instead. Note, this is one of the number one problems I see in games. Don't call for Defy Danger just because you think they should have to roll. This is like probably the best advice that I can give to certainly any 5e player or GM. Right. If a character does something chancy, but there's no looming danger, or the stakes just aren't that high, don't roll, right? So remember, these are not ors. These are all ands. If danger is looming, and the stakes are high, and you're doing something chancy, that's when you roll Defy Danger. So they note, like, this is very much, it's maybe even defined, because again, this is not a simulationist mechanic. Okay, so for example, well, what if the character's doing something that's chancy? Okay, but if there's no danger or stakes, we're not rolling. You could argue the other thing, like, okay, well, what if something is not chancy, but the stakes are high and danger's looming? We don't roll for that either. It might feel like you should roll, but you don't. All three of these need to be true in order for you to roll Defy Danger. Otherwise, the GM just makes a move and tells you what happens, following their agendas and their principles. That's it. Yep, just make a call and say what happens following your principles and agenda. Okay, Jeremy's just knocking it out of the park here. I don't even need to be here. You know what? Buy the goddamn game already. Just read it and stop watching these videos. All right. Anyways, note, you want to make sure that the players are aware, at least generically, right? What are the stakes? What are the dangers, right? If you can't articulate the danger or the stakes, you're not defying danger. Okay. This is another classic 5e. I say 5e because that's what most, but it's a Dungeons and Dragons problem, right? This problem has been around since the age-old days, right? Which is the classic, like, you know, players doing something or whatever. You know, maybe they're in a dungeon or they're in a town or something happens, and then the GM goes, make an athletics check, and the player goes, what? Why? And the GM's like, you'll see. Right? That is like, and I'm like, I'm not saying like like when I was, you know, 25 years ago or whatever, you know, back in the late 90s or whatever, early 2000s, I'm sure I did that too. And number one, that's not good, I think, for any game. Number two, it's definitely not good for this game. Okay. So communicate. What are the stakes of the danger? Right? You're walking down the street. You know, make an acrobatics check. Why? You don't want to find out. And then the player rolls hot. You don't even tell them the DC. You don't tell them the DC. You don't tell them what they're rolling for. They have no idea what's going on. And then they roll like a 16, and you go, oh, nice. You know, like it's like, what are we doing? So definitely don't do that. But again, this is a classic one that I see happen all the time, which is a GM will call for defy danger, but they won't tell the players what they're defying danger from. Okay? That's a problem. And you're like, well, the player wouldn't know. No, the PC wouldn't know. The player is a person, a living, breathing human being at the table with you. Respect them, please. But it'll ruin their immersion. Yes, it will. Get over it. It's not the be-all, end-all that you think it is. All right. Anyways, moving on. Play a different game. Sorry. I don't know why I got so angry there. Anyways, involve the players in the discussion. I don't know. Is it strength or is it constitution? Let the players decide. Well, they're just going to pick the one that they're best at. Okay, who cares? Get over yourself. You're not trying to challenge them. You're not trying to win the game. You're not trying to beat the game. This is, don't suffer nonsense. Don't be a weasel. Don't let them be weasels. An arrow is flying straight at you. What do you do? And they say, I flash a smile at the arrow and I charm it into missing. They aren't defying danger. They're taking an arrow into the face. In that case, tell them the consequences and then ask if they still want to do that. All right. Anyways. So, good stuff. Now, most GMs are totally cool with, the 10 plus results because that, means you avoided the danger and you kind of got out of it scot-free. 7 through 9 is where a lot of people fall apart. And again, this is a tough problem to have because this is where most of the results of the game are designed, right? 2d6 is a bell curve. On average, you get a 7. But remember, because if it's a bell curve, most of your results are going to be 6s, 7s, and 8s. Most people are going to be rolling with statistics of +1, +0. So you're going to end up with a lot of 7, 8s, and 9s. All right. That means you need to get good at this. And that means that you need to be, again, presenting something. Now, it should be something obvious or you wouldn't be defying danger. And so that's kind of the first clue, which is if you don't know what a lesser cost or a lesser success or a cost or a consequence would be, well, then you probably didn't define what the danger was that well, because otherwise, what are they defying? Now, Fed Up Guy says, Derek, how does it work when players don't know and haven't figured out what the danger is? I just told them what the danger is. Like, for example, the players go to a door, and they start to open the door. I described the door as being like really jammed and stuck, and the player starts to jerk. Says, "Well, I'm gonna force this door open," and I go, "Okay, defy danger." And they're like, "Wait, what am I defying danger? Is the door trapped?" I go, "Oh no! You're defying the danger that the ogres in the next room are going to hear you." And the player goes, "Oh, okay." Right. So the players didn't know about the ogres. I'm telling them about the ogres now. Correct. It is not. Yep. Anyways, this is the lesser success is the kind of classic, which is this is a big debate. We've been debating this for years on the Knights of Last Call Patreon Discord, which is whether or not lesser success is success. Okay, and whether or not you are, if you can wordsmith and trap your way. I mean, I'm not going to get into this conversation today, but the classic is, you're like, okay, you're racing, the slavering blood beast of Trawl is right behind you. You're running down the corridor and the GM describes, there's a yawning pit in front of you. And the player goes, okay, I'm going to, take a step back and I'm going to run, take 3 big steps and jump over the pit. So obviously the goal is to get to the other side of the pit and not fall down it and die. And so, so you're defying the danger of falling down the pit, and the player gets a 7, 8, or 9. So you make it, you get to the other side of the pit and you don't fall down the pit and die, right? You've defied the danger and you've made it to the other side of the pit, but right, you're hanging on the edge of it. Now, there's a lot of people who argue that I didn't give you your success. You're like, no. I state my goal is I'm going to jump across the pit and land safely on the other side on 2 feet with no problems whatsoever. That's what success looks like. Or another classic example is like, I shoot them in the head. And we roll, and you get a 7, 8, or 9. And I'm like, okay, you pull out your pistol, you take aim, you shoot. They try to dodge out of the way, but they're not successful, and it clips them in the shoulder instead. And you're like, no, you just robbed me. You're cheating as the GM. My success was, I very clearly said, I am only trying to do one thing in this universe, which is put a bullet between their eyes. So anything less than that is not success, and so you don't get me. So number one, stop playing with those people. That's really the easiest solution. And I'm not really going to give it much more conversation other than that. What we need to sort of do is really have a better understanding of, specific details versus intention. But anyways, cost. They do it, but they lose or suffer something. They lose or suffer something in the process. Right. By the way, for those of you who are familiar with this channel, this is the classic landing the spacecraft. Okay. Which arguably wasn't even a lesser success. It was a cost, right? You do it, but with an unwelcome outcome. Yes, correct. You should focus more on the accomplishment as a general sense rather than the actual specific, elements of what does that specifically look like. Also, you can get actually a lot more leeway with this if you communicate this in advance, right? Because, for example, if a player says, okay, I'm going to leap across the pit. I said, okay, you're defying danger. If you get a 10 or higher, if you do it, you jump across. If you get a 7, 8, or 9, you'll still jump across, but you're going to be dangling from the edge, and the blood beast is going to be, racing up right behind you, and it's going to take, then you're going to have to try to figure out a way to climb off or get off. And then if you set that ahead of time, if you set the stakes ahead of time, then the player can't really, complain about it because they kind of accepted that going in. So that's why setting those stakes ahead of time is so important, And this is great advice in general. Giving them the choice between, say, cost or consequence or the chance to back down and not do the thing at all. Players often feel better about adversity when they choose from the, whatever bad option they want, So, for example, a great example of that was one time Bob, when we were playing, we were technically playing World of Dungeons, but Bob got, kicked off of a cliff, and, he caught himself, and I said, okay, Bob, you are, you don't fall down to your, you don't fall to your death, but you lose something. Do you lose your shield or do you lose your backpack? Right. And, Bob was like, oh, cool. Damn. Okay. Nope. Backpack's got to go. I need that shield, So by giving them a choice, you actually kind of price them into the decision better. If you just make something happen to them, it could feel very punitive. But by giving people a choice, you make them feel more engaged, which, again, agency goes a long way towards making people accept bad consequences. On a 6-, though, The danger comes to bear before they can act or as they act. Now, again, damn it, I don't want to get off on tangents here, but I do want to scup here, right? Which is, remember, a 7 through 9 is still fundamentally a success. Don't make the lesser success cost or consequence so bad that they'd have been better off doing nothing. So this is another thing that trips a lot of people up who come from a more traditional classic game, right? Because they're trying to win, right? They're trying to beat the game. And so when you're trying to beat the game, your idea of success isn't just achieving what you set out to do. It's also, and nothing bad happened. Right. And so there's a lot of people out there who treat something bad happening as being worse, right, than achieving their success or not achieving their success. Right. So it's kind of like right. Like, I think this is a basic human, right. It's a basic human physiology. Right. We're more loss adverse. Right. So I know a lot of traditional-minded 5e players, D&D players, who, if you gave them success, everything, you gave them everything that they wanted, but you also gave them a cost, and then you gave them the option to, and by the way, it could be a minor cost, right? Like, you gave them 10 points of success, and you gave them -3 points of cost. And then you say, do you want to eliminate the cost, but it also means you eliminate the success. And there's a lot of very sort of trad-minded people who will go, yes, I don't want anything bad to happen to me ever. Right? In their mind, the best game of D&D that ever existed was the one where they hit every DC, they hit every monster, they never got hit, they didn't lose any hit points, nothing bad happened to them, right? They start the adventure, they go in, and it's like the GM's like, oh, make a perception check to see if you made the perception check, you spot the ambush, oh, you attack them, oh, well, critical hit, critical hit, critical hit. And okay, great. Well, the trap opens up underneath you. Make a reflex. Oh, you made your dexterity save. Nothing bad happens to you. Okay, well, but now you need to open up the door, but the portcullis is crashed down. Make a strength check. Oh, you succeeded. And like, basically the players like steamroll the game. Like, in their mind, this is what a movie is, but it's not, right? What a movie is essentially a series of the heroes essentially endlessly failing or maybe getting by with lesser successes or consequences from their actions. But most movies and most stories are based on, or if you look at them, basically the players lose, and finally win at the very end. The reason why is because if you're just crushing it now, think about the mentality of that, though. Okay, like if you're in, and this is the problem. Tangent. This is the problem with RPGs, where even traditional RPGs, because you are both a participant and a spectator, okay? Which is to say, if I go to a sports game and I'm not really invested in the outcome, I want to see a great game. Ideally, I want to see a game that is right down to the wire, like, oh my God, it's 30-27 and there's 1 minute left and the other team has the ball, right? It's going to be high stakes, high tension, high drama. Okay. But if you are on a sports team, like if you're playing in a sports, you don't want a tense game. You want to crush the other opponent. You want it to be a blowout. You want to basically be like, we're going to be playing our bench in the second half, right? Or maybe you've got money on the game, or maybe you've got, you want your team to make it to the playoffs. You don't want a tense game. You don't want a close game. You're more invested in the outcome, right? Rather than the game, right? You're focused on the destination, not the journey, right? You want to get there and have it be as the least bumpy road imaginable, right? Because you just want to win. When I played, sports growing up, when I played hockey, I was never sitting there going like, oh, I hope it goes to a shootout. No, I wanted to run rule them and have them call the game early because we completely devastated them by the end of the second period. And they just said, okay, game over, you're up by 10. Now, is that dramatic? No. Is it bad for the audience? Yeah, probably. But is it great for you as a player of the team? Yes, especially when you're trying to win. So when you think about RPGs from a competitive mindset, when you think of it as I'm here to win the game, then suddenly that mentality starts to make a lot more sense, because you aren't being a participant. You're not being a you're not being a audience member, right? You're on the bench. You're playing in the sport. You're playing in the game. So this gets to kind of the concept of like type 1, type 2, type 3 fun Gundeslav, right? Right. So type 1 fun is fun in the moment. Type 2 fun is fun that isn't really, you voluntarily put yourself into it and it wasn't really fun at the time, but it was fun when you look back at it. And then type 3 fun is fun that you would never voluntarily put yourself in, but now you're like, wow, what an incredible experience. Like let's say you're on a boat and it starts to sink and capsize, and you have to fight for your life and you get to it escape. Like not saying that it's fun per se, but it's like it fills you with a sense of like, wow, I survived. But you would never put yourself in that situation. So yes, but most people code for type 1 fun, right? Like most people code for type 1 fun. It is not enough that I must win. The GM must be driven before me, their dice bag pillaged to enrich my lineage. No, I have not. I just saw an ad for that today, but I am not a Tom Clancy fan, so I don't really know, much about that. So anyways, point is, for some people, it isn't about the experience. Okay. It's about the results. Now, this gets into Magic the Gathering, Timmy, and Spike theory, right? Like when I went to play a Magic the Gathering tournament, okay, the best thing that could ever happen to me is that my opponent mulliganed to oblivion, right? Mulligan is where you throw back your hand of 7 cards and you take 6 instead. And if that hand is bad, you throw back 6 and you take 5. And by the way, even doing this once greatly decreases your chance of winning. Doing it twice is basically a death sentence. Yep, that's what I want. In fact, I want the game to be over as quickly as possible so that I have time to go to the bathroom, maybe get something to eat. Okay? So that's what I want. I'm there to win, right? I'm there to win. Winning is what I'm there to do. That's how I have fun. Right, Thaddeus, you are correct. That is even better. My opponent doesn't even show up, and I just get to mark the W. Thaddeus, that's great. Yes. So, anyways, point is, if someone's playing PBTA with that mentality, whether they're aware of that mentality or not, you are going to have problems, because they are going to have a lot of problems. Another way to think of it is, we just discussed that mechanically, PBTA is designed to generate most common the 7, 8, or 9 result. Okay. If you like what this game is doing, you love that, because you're like, cool, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Just opened
hey, what's up, Edward?
In. Classic Colk #Stone Month.
Edward, I opened on the PDF, so go bet you'll get wrecked, sir. Get wrecked. I did it. So, anyways, whereas a tradition, so in other words, as a PBTA player, and I mean that as a GM, and I mean it as a player, I want the 7, 8, or 9 result. That's the result that is going to create the most like fun forward motion, right? Where you kind of, you move forward and to the left, right? Whereas a traditional minded player, if it was up to them, they would roll nothing but 10 pluses the entire session. And if the mentality of someone is, I only want to roll 10 pluses, you're going to have a hard time, because the game literally, it makes it hard to even do that. And they are going to be very unsatisfied. And to the point where, again, they would rather nothing happen than, oh, you succeed, but there's this cost. They would rather nothing happen, because nothing is at least neutral. And you might say, yeah, but you succeeded, right? And they're like, yeah. But I'm so loss adverse that the fact that anything bad happened to me makes me upset because it makes me feel like I'm losing. So, anyways. So we get some great by the way, we get some great examples here, of course, as continues to be here. Well, maybe you're not playing the game for strictly, a spike reason, right? Now, when you help someone who has not yet rolled, the GM picks one. They can accomplish more than they could alone. They gain advantage on their own. Either way, you are exposed to any risk, cost, or consequences associated with the roll. Okay, so there's a couple of things about this. Number one, I like that you don't have to make a move. Okay, I like that you don't have to make a roll. That at least is something. Number two, you have to do it before the roll, which isn't as fun, but it's okay because it's not like it's a super complex move anyways. The GM gets to pick. Do they accomplish more or do they gain advantage? Number 4, I like that there is a consequence to helping, right? This is the Torchbearer. This is what Burning Wheel does, right? You can help somebody for free in Torchbearer, but if they get a consequence, you get a consequence. So it's not free. Okay, so there's risk. So what I dislike somewhat is that there is no mechanical cost to it, some sort of meta currency. But it's okay because it has at least this cost. And this is the most important thing, which is helping isn't free. And because we're playing PBTA games, right, anytime we're rolling the dice means that there is a legitimate thing or problem that could be concerned, right? Yeah. So, good stuff. I like this technique. When aid grants advantage, have the helping player roll the extra d6. It makes them feel more involved. So the rule, not just like, oh, it'd be fun. No, the rule in Torchbearer is if you help somebody, you have to take one of your d6 that looks materially different than their d6s, and you have to hand it to them, and they have to add it to their dice pool and roll with it. And it even says, this is the law of the land. It says that in Torchbearer. Share the load. So. Oh, you know what? I didn't, Junderlin, I missed that. I just saw your chat here. This was from earlier. From Junderlin.
Junderland Games tipped $5. Stonetop Hype Month continues. Actual play when?
We owe a Daggerheart actual play before we owe a Stonetop actual play. If Darrington Press would get off their butts. Anyways, good stuff. More advice, of course, great stuff. Clash. This is the melee attack. And of course, we're going to go into a huge detail here, which is this is not an attack roll. Okay? This is not an attack roll. It doesn't represent that. One of the drawbacks for Dungeon World is that by having strength, it makes people think of D&D, and so it makes it think that this is some sort of simulationist move. It is not. Okay? So it is rather, it represents two characters able to fight in melee. Okay? Or close quarters. It does not represent you swinging a sword. Because swinging a sword could be anything. It could be a lot of things. For example, if I swing a sword at a dragon who has an adamantine hide, we aren't really fighting. All right? If I, a grown man, decide to beat up a toddler, we're not really fighting. Okay? It's the same idea. this only triggers when two characters are engaged in what we will call sort of a reasonable exchange of blows. All right. For example, if the foe can't fight back or won't fight back, it's not a clash. Okay. This is an example of where I don't want to say evenly matched, but it's an example of where two people are basically both cognizantly fighting and able to reasonably hurt each other. If that isn't true, this move doesn't trigger, thus leading to the classic, 12, 16 hit point dragon essay, right? Which is the idea that a lot of the things that you think of would not even be an attack roll. Okay. Toddler bowl, right? This is the classic. How many toddlers could you take at once? Right. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's so cool. So TAS agent said, I mentioned this previously, but Grimwild's Foundry module labels the assist die separately. That is awesome. I love it. Now, cool, Gunslav. Apparently, Jeremy went into some detail about these changes. Now, there's a couple of things which I really like here, which is it says, when you fight, your maneuver works as expected, parentheses, deal your damage, and pick one, which is either you can avoid your enemy's, counter, or you can deal the extra damage, but suffer your enemy's attack. Okay, so this is good. But there's a couple of things here. Number one is it talks about it being a maneuver. Okay, so it's a much more broad definition of what you could be doing. But the most important one is this. You suffer your enemy's attack. You suffer your enemy's attack, which means it's not necessarily that your enemy is just doing damage to you. And that is definitely a change. Like if we read Dungeon World, where the hell is Dungeon World? Oh, here. If we read Dungeon World's which is called Hack and Slash, which to be fair is a great name for a move. If we read Hack and Slash says, it says, when you attack an enemy in melee, okay, notice it says when you attack an enemy in melee. This says when you fight in melee. Subtle difference, but important. On a 10+, you deal your damage to the enemy and avoid their attack. So in this, it says 10+, you deal your damage to the enemy. Here it says your maneuver works as expected, parentheses, deal your damage. Again, striking more to the fictional component of you could be doing other things here. All right. And then it says on a 7 through 9, you deal your damage to the enemy and the enemy makes an attack against you. All right. So again, this idea that you're suffering from your enemy's attack versus your enemy attacks you makes it seem a little bit more, I think, flexible. It's just a little bit of subtle language changes, which I think is really, really cool. So anyways, note, actually, yes, correct. So, there's a lot of cool things that you can do for this. For example, maybe a character, let's say that your character has a dagger and you are going to, you're going to try to run up, awesome, cool ninja flip mode style, right? And you want to close in with this heavily armored knight who has a pole arm. Now, in the fiction, they have a big pole arm and you just have a little dagger. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to move up to them and I'm going to start fighting them. Well, I hate to tell you, but realistically, you're not really fighting because they have a big pole arm. You're at reach, that you have a dagger. Now, just because Clash doesn't trigger, though, doesn't mean that you can't tell them the requirements and then ask, which is a classic GM move. The GM might say, well, first, you need to get inside their guard. Okay. In which case the player might go, oh, I got it. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in, and as they come in to smash me with their, pole arm, I'm going to do like a cool Zempo Kaiten, forward roll and spring up inside their reach. And I go, awesome. that sounds like you're defying danger, probably using your dexterity. And the player goes, totally. The danger I'm defying is their polearm attack as I close in. From a D&D perspective, you could think of it as the danger you're defying is the attack of opportunity. And rather than them making an attack roll against your armor class, you're defying danger with your dexterity. Right? So I roll a 10 plus, I get within their guard, and now I'm up close, and the GM says, you're like, cool, now I'm going to slash them with my dagger. All right, roll for, clash, roll for clash. And the GM might say, actually, you know what? No. Fictionally, he just swung. Fictionally, you're inside of his guard. He had a long polearm. Fictionally, you just did this really cool ninja flip mode. I'm going to say it doesn't trigger clash either. And the player goes, oh. I'm going to say do your damage automatically. Because I don't think maybe you haven't met the requirements of clash. You're not fighting this guy. You just totally pulled the sheet over his head. You kind of got him bewildered and chartreuse. And so anyways, point is, you can set this up in a variety of different ways and make your combat far more visceral and far more involved and far more fictionally interesting than you would ever expect or imagine if you get good at it. And here's the truth of the matter. You already know how to do this. You just don't know that you know how to do this, right? Yeah, because once you start seeing the Matrix, right, Shinobi, you start seeing it in all these different ways. And you start seeing the connection, So Cole says, this really is a great solution to the HP problem in PBTA. Explicitly tell the GM there's a hit point loss, but also the fiction must change, right? Which is a great way of saying it. It's not just about hit points, dropping off. All right. So anyways, and again, so here's another mistake that I see a lot, and I do this all the time, and players love it. On a 6-, the obvious result is that the player's maneuver fails and that they suffer the enemy's attack. That's the obvious result. But you can make any move. Remember, a 6- is basically the game saying, GM, what you say goes. Now, in every other RPG that you play, the GM, maybe this isn't actually true, right? But like in every other RPG, there's this belief, this mindset, this toxic mindset, if you ask me, that the GM is God, that their world is, that your word is law, and that the GM at any time, for whatever reason, can make anything happen, and, I am the god of this universe. PBTA really turns that idea on its head, and it says, no, we are all beholden to a set of rules, and we are all beholden to a set of procedures. And the GM is not the omniscient, omnipotent God of this universe. But the game is saying, when a player chooses to engage in something that the game says this is a big decisive moment about whether the story is going to go left or right, whether we're going to zig or zag, we're going to roll dice. And the player has to acknowledge that by rolling dice, they are risking essentially giving the GM permission to finally act for a brief moment as a god of the universe. Okay? So normally a GM, like we have this idea that the GM can do whatever they want whenever they want. This is another problem. So we've been talking about players. Now let's talk about GMs. A lot of GMs are like, no, the only reason I GM is because I want to be able to do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. So they have a hard time with PBTA because PBTA says, nope, you can't do that. But if a player rolls 6-, you, the GM, get permission from the game to make any move you want as long as you follow your principles. So even the GM still has restrictions, right? The GM is never, ever above their principles. Okay, you're never above your agenda. All right, you still want to loading. Loading. Where the hell are the principles? Did I skip them? Maybe I did. Oh, here we go. You still need to address questions, be a fan of the player characters, embrace the fantastic and the mundane, respect your prep, give your characters life, bring it home, let things breathe, let things burn. You still need to be doing this. And you need to be doing these things at all times. So if you make a move, the game says you can do whatever you want. But if you're not doing that thing while being a fan of the player characters and embracing the fantastic and the mundane and all this other stuff, then you're not really, you are cheating. Okay, so you need to be mindful and aware of that. Now, that being said, you can do whatever you want. So the obvious result is that whatever they were trying to do fails, and the enemy gets to attack them instead. But you can make any move that follows your principles. Maybe the player rolls a 6-, which the game calls a miss. And they kill the opponent that they're attacking. Like, this concept breaks a lot of people for a lot of reasons. Number one, because of the way that they're thinking of the game as being, competitive. The way that they're thinking of it is this is a campaign as competition. Number two, because of the fact that they think of the clash roll as being synonymous with an attack roll. You're like, wait a second, that would be like a player rolling a 2 on their D20, and then the GM tells you that they're dead. But not from fudging, because I rolled the 2. I know I rolled a 2, and I know that I missed. And the GM acknowledges that I rolled a miss, and then they're telling me that the enemy died anyways. But again, but maybe the monster falls and crushes a follower. Maybe they cut down this foe, but the next one clocks them on the head and the PC becomes captured, right? So you can, on a 6-, you can, on a 6-, still give the players a form of success, okay? But it's the kind of success where if they could undo it, maybe they would. In fact, they might even say, I would be better with this not happening. But a 6- is your way of saying, like, no, like, you failed, okay? You wanted something, and if you could undo this, you would. And this is where the GM has a lot more permission to sort of influence the game's outcome and be that GM and kind of put their thumb on the scale a little bit and shape the game, right? We think about normal D&D games, especially I think, the way people modernly play them, is that the GM is the one at the wheel all the time, right? This is a game where, the players and the GM are kind of sharing the wheel. And then you get to a point in the game where we roll dice. And that's basically like saying, okay, we're both going to take our hands off of the wheel. We're going to roll the dice. And if we roll high, the player gets to kind of steer the wheel just by themselves for a little bit. And if we roll low, the GM gets to steer the car just for a little bit by themselves. And that's what we're deciding. It's not representing an attack roll. It is representing the sort of who has narrative control here, right? Who is guiding and directing where our game and our story and our fiction is headed for the next several moments, the next story beat in the unfolding fiction, right? Very cool. We had a super chat from Trekkie. A GM who does whatever they want, whenever they want, to whatever PCs, tends to lose players because the games tend to be deeply, deeply, deeply unfun. Now, you say that, but I actually find that there's a lot of players out there who actually not only acknowledge, in some ways, they almost prefer it. It's kind of like a hurt me daddy type mentality because they would rather have a good story. When I first started playing RPGs with Bob, he had never played RPGs before. And he told me that his greatest fear was that he was going to fuck up the story with his actions. So he was almost, when he first started, because he had watched Critical Role and he was like, well, I don't want to do something that would be wrong and would mess up the story. So in a weird way, he was almost happier if I would have just told him what to do and where he was supposed to stand and what he's supposed to be doing in this scene, because then he couldn't mess up my story, not realizing that, I didn't have a story, Boothby says, I really want to not be the omnipotent God of the universe, Now, Marcus says, that's the one thing about this style I don't really like. We're talking about, whether the GM has carte blanche to do whatever they want, whenever they want to, That's okay. What's up, Aaron? Blah, 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 blah. More examples, more examples, more examples. Defend. When you take up a defensive stance or jump in to protect others, roll plus con. On a 10 or higher, you hold 3 readiness. There's a little bit of a language shift here, which I like, which is the classic PBTA language just says hold 3. And it's this generic reset. And then they'll say spend hold. But the thing is like every move generates its own hold pool. So I like that hold here is more of like a verb rather than a proper noun. And basically it means, think of yourself as having 3 readiness points because you made this move. And then you can spend readiness 1 for 1 to either make an attack target you instead of your person you're protecting. You can take half damage. You can draw all attention from the person you're protecting to you. And or you can strike back at an attacker, dealing your damage with disadvantage. All right. When you go on the offense or cease to focus on defense or the threat passes, lose all of your readiness. So it's not like a permanent, reset. Now, if you've never played Dungeon World before, let me tell you something. This is the coolest move of all time. It is by far one of the most enjoyable, fun, tanky, defensive style things ever. I mean, I will say Fabula Ultima, with my little home brew tweak, personally, I think, is pretty good. But, outside of that, it is no joke. But anyways, this is a great move because remember, there's no turns in PBTA. Okay? And we're not trying to win. We're just trying to let awesome people be awesome. We're trying to be fans of the players, right? So when now, so there's another thing too here. Realize that a move uses the stat that it uses, but don't get too caught up in what stat it is talking about, okay? So, like, for example, if you're a wizard, or in this game, I guess you would be a, like a seeker or something. And let's say that the ogre, comes down upon you, raising its tree trunk like club and brings it smashing down over your head. And you might say, okay, you're like almost reflexively, I raise my hands above my head, blue energy streaming off of it, and I try to deflect it with a magical shield. Now, again, you have to have fictional authority to do this. But realistically, you're taking up a defensive stance. I would still ask you to roll plus con. But how you describe something in the fiction isn't necessarily tied to exactly how you do it. And to do it, do it. When you take up a defensive stance, as long as you're capable of doing this, you can do it. And so your wizard might roll a 7, 8, or 9, get 1 readiness, and instead,
Gotta go.
half an enemy's half the damage they take.
Hype.
Right.
I just
So
don't
the
want YouTube to get a cut.
the shield bends and softens the
Derek.
blow. Note that you can trigger this move proactively and reflexively. Because again, there are no turns in the game. Hey, Gundeslav, thank you so much. Put this under Stone Hype. I just didn't want YouTube to get the cut. That's sick. We love it when we screw YouTube out of their money. All right. There we go. We're tied up. It might take a minute to update, but it will. All right. And again, more great advice, a whole page of descriptions and examples, which is honestly worth the price of admission alone for this book. All right. Now, interfere. A little bit of a controversial thing. When you try to foil another PC's action and neither of you back down, roll blah, 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 blah. On a 10 or higher, they pick one from the list. On a 7 through 9, they pick one from the list below, but you are left off balance, exposed, or vulnerable. Okay? And basically, you can either give them disadvantage to their next roll, or they can choose to change course, relent, or allow their move to be foiled. Now, why is this? Well, number one, because if you've watched, for example, our Root actual play, PBTA is not about winning. Now, again, well, specifically Stonetop isn't about winning. If we were playing a sports game and we were playing hockey, again, that's the team sport I played, it would be a real dick move if I started fucking with one of my fellow team members to prevent them from scoring a goal. And they would be right to be upset at me because they are trying to win. And that is being a major dick. Now, taking a step back for a moment, a tangent, if you will, this is, I think, sometimes what causes a lot of problems at tables is that people don't realize that they are trying to win, but they also are they've been sort of brainwashed by what role playing is and watching Critical Role. And so they go, but it's what my character would do, right? My character wouldn't want you to take that relic. My character thinks that you taking that relic is a bad idea and that we should leave this relic alone. So because that's what my character would do and it's what my character believes, I'm going to try to stop you. But this causes tension in a group because the group is like, but we're here to win. We're on the same team. Why are you fucking with the team? So those two ideas, it's what my character would do, and we're here to win, are kind of opposed to one another. And that's why it causes a lot of problems and a lot of tension, and why you get, people bitching about lawful stupid paladins and, stuff like that. Because the team's like, we're here to win. Why are you not on my team? And now sometimes people don't realize that they're playing D&D. They'll think they're a really strong, hardcore minded role player, but they don't realize is that at some level, deep down inside, they are still playing the game, to win. But once you can kind of acknowledge that you're not here to win, that the game is unwinnable, that the game is there to be experienced, not beaten. It's about the journey, not the destination. Suddenly you get this freedom to potentially say, I am going to try to stop you. And potentially mechanically interfere with your character. And in this game, this is how you do it. You got to break the group first. Yes, by having them play Monster Heart. Monster Heart's a great way to break that, for sure. But my Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay dwarf hates elves, so he kills them on sight. Well, hey, at least at the end of the session, there won't be any dwarves and elves in the same party, one way or the other, right? And yes, in real life, in a more, sort of balanced, nuanced, real situation, people do this all the times, right? It's just messy and sticky and gross. And we see in movies, right? Characters make decisions all the time that may not be for the better good of the team, right? They make selfish decisions. They make misguided decisions. They make misinformed decisions. And, if there was this idea of if this was a sports team, it'd be disastrous. But in a movie, an experience, a story, it is, or in just real life, it is far more understandable and acceptable. And it does happen, So Plus One XP has a great kind of follow-up, which is like, hey, how would you feel if my character interfered with what you are doing is an easy enough question to ask. Sometimes it's just enough to object and not interfere, but it is a blast to interfere, you know? And I agree. This move does a great job of adjudicating it, because look how it starts. It says, when you try to foil another PC's action and neither of you back down, which kind of indicates we've already been sort of having a conversation, and we either can't agree, or more likely, as players who are here for a PBTA game, you say, you know what, let's let the dice decide. And, you know, I've talked about this before, you know, like, you know, my great buddy and Knights of Last Call member Smith, you know, when we were playing Legend of the Five Rings, you know, another PC was trying to convince him not to throw his life away. And he said, you know what? I don't know what would convince me. You know what? Let's have your character make a persuade check against my character. And if you succeed, I will say that you did convince me. And if you fail, I will say I wasn't convinced. And for him, that sort of disclaiming decision-making is more fun, which, again, is very opposite from the way that a lot of people play role-playing games. A lot of people play role-playing games strictly and almost entirely for immersion, right? The idea of disclaiming decision-making as a player character is almost anathema to their idea of what a role-playing game is, whereas I personally think it's the best part. So very cool, very interesting move. And more importantly, you know, an indication that in this game, there may be situations where players don't always agree and don't always get along. All right, next is our int move, our knowledge move, our lore move, which is know things. So if a player asks you what or if they know something, ask them if they want to know things. You can also prompt this with, you might know things about this as a Tanner's Apprentice. Do you want to know things? Players don't have to roll know things to recall common knowledge or to remember details that they've simply forgotten. Just remind them of the truth and move on. If it's unclear, ask for clarification and then resolve. Now, players do not have to explain how they would know a topic before rolling. They can roll, and then you tell them something interesting and can ask them, why do you know this? Or how do you know this? The stories your players can come up with would be pure gold. And I will say, I have always gotten great results out of this, which is asking a player why they knew something. And a player might say, oh, you know, I studied golems, you know, my second year at Wizard Academy. You know, I was really interested in golems, you know. And it's like, oh, cool, you know, who was your teacher? Oh, you know, and it's fun. You're collaboratively world building and players get more involved, and like a simple skill check can become something truly interesting. Now, I only have one minor tweak that I always make to this move. It says, on a 10 or higher, the GM will tell you something interesting and useful about the topic at hand. What I like to do is basically reach a point where a player tries to know something. And if they roll a 10 or higher, I basically say, you do know something interesting and useful. What do you know? And often on a 6-, I tell them that they do know something about this creature and that it's really bad for them. So in either way, their character knows something, okay? It's just a question of whether or not it's useful and helpful to the party, or if it's going to be a major problem and something that they wish wasn't true. So that is the way I typically resolve these moves. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I will tell the player something interesting and useful if I do have something useful to tell them. But a lot of times I'm using it as a way to, you know, sort of, you know, give them more agency in the game. And again, Jeremy does a great job here. Feel free to ask your players for input on the answers, especially if it's something that you haven't specifically prepped. Sure, you tell me, how do these drakes hunt, and how can you use that to your advantage. And this is where a player, you might go, well, isn't a player just going to come up with some bullshit? Like they're going to be like, oh, well, the drakes hunt during the night, but they become active when the sun starts to go down. But for like that first hour, they have bad eyesight because they can only really see in the dark. So they're awake and out, but they are, their eyesight's really bad. And I'm like, that is awesome. Why do you know that? Or like, when did you study these drakes? Oh, blah, 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 blah. And players, and a lot of people will be like, that's cheating. Your players are just going to walk all over the drakes. Who cares? You're not here to win. You're not here to challenge them. It's not a fucking sport. There's no scoreboard. There is no scoreboard. And I cannot stress this enough. 90% of the problems you've probably had with PBTA have come because you and or your players unconsciously are used to treating the game like there's some sort of scoreboard and that everyone's keeping score. All right. Anyways, moving on. And again, great information and advice and information. All right, let fly. This is when you take an easy shot with a ranged weapon, deal your damage. So, again, here's an example of a move that does not involve dice rolls. When you take an easy shot with a ranged weapon, you just get to deal your damage. If the shot is tricky or you're under some kind of pressure, roll plus dex. On a 10 or higher, you have a clear shot and you get to do your damage. On a 7, 8, or 9, you have to pick one. You can either deal your damage, but reduce your ammo. Remember, ammo's like, you either have like a lot of it, a little bit, one left, or you're out. You're empty. Or you can hold steady and wait for a clear shot. And when the moment arrives, you get to deal your damage. You can move to get a clear shot, exposing yourself to danger or giving up some advantage. Or rush the shot and deal your damage, leading to a cost or complication of the GM's choice. Now, this may seem like so in some ways, this is the most complex move that we have discussed so far. Why? Well, the reason is because it turns out it is really tricky to adjudicate shooting a bow. The reason is because when you're engaged in melee, okay, when you're hack and slashing or clashing in this game, turns out it's very easy as a GM, as a player, as a group in the fiction to understand I rolled badly, something bad happened to me. Yeah, you get hit in the face. Yeah, they wrap a tentacle around your shield and wrench it from your grasp. Yeah, they sweep your legs out from underneath you and you crumple to a heap. Yeah, you hear a sickening crunch as their mace connects with your backpack and several potions shatter, right? Yeah, your helmet takes the blow, but dents and bends, and now it's stuck sideways on your helm, on your head, and you can't see. Yeah, you get crushed in the chest and go flying back several feet and land, gasping for breath, unable to move. Yeah, you just get fucking crushed and you take a shitload of damage, right? It's very easy to, we're just kind of programmed. We're used to thinking in terms of two people fighting, what could go wrong? Turns out shooting is a little bit trickier because it's a little bit harder, assuming, they don't have a range weapon. If I'm shooting an owlbear from the other side of the battlefield, and I roll like a 7, 8, 9, or I roll a 6-, like what bad thing happens? Like, and I've seen GMs in sort of moments of comic desperation, do things like, I don't know, your bow explodes, your bow catches on fire. What am I supposed to fucking do? Right? There's a lot like players, GMs can almost get upset because they're like, how does this go bad for me? How does this go bad for you? You're shooting a fucking bow. Enter Stonetop. First things first. And by the way, this is born out of the volley move. Okay. Which is from, Dungeon World. And Dungeon World says, when you take aim and shoot at an enemy at range, roll plus dex. On a 10 or higher, you have a clear shot and you deal your damage. On a 7, 8, or 9, some shit happens. Here's why this is so good. Number one, because of this first sentence. This is hugely important because the game acknowledges that if you have your bow and you're set up in a good spot and you're not under any pressure and the shot is a clean shot, there isn't anything that's going to go wrong. It turns out you're just going to get to shoot them. So this sentence alone already fixes so many of the problems that volley introduced from Dungeon World. Because it acknowledges that, yeah, it turns out shooting people with a bow or with a ranged weapon when it's an easy shot and you're not under any duress, yeah, it's really hard for that to go bad for you. You know, you might not hit them very cleanly or squarely. You might only deal a couple of points of damage, but it is, you know, when this situation is true, it's hard to imagine what would go wrong. Where is the dog? We have no dogs today, but you know, the sun is still up. This is a little bit of an earlier stream. A lot of times when the dogs are in here, it's because their mom has gone to bed. And so my roommate has gone to bed. And when Amanda goes to bed, they'll come up here to be with me because I'm still up. So, but since, like, you know, the sun is still up, it's only 8:20. So in any case, no dogs. So the first sentence solves a lot of problems because it basically, by the way, this is a great fictional. This is the kind of fictional tactical positioning that we talk about, right? Which is like, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, what are you doing? You're like, I'm going to pull out my bow and I'm going to aim at the, you know, I'm going to aim at the drow sorcerer and, you know, shoot him. And I'm like, okay, well, there's several drow, I don't know, whatever, spider dancers closing in on your position. It's going to be a tricky shot. And then maybe like the fighter says something like, you know, like, well, can I intercept them and keep them occupied? And I go, yeah, totally. All right. So the fighter's going to rush in. We're going to get to your move in a second. We're going to have you defend. But as you kind of engage the spider dancers, but that puts you in a situation where you have no, you know, you have an easy shot. Just deal your damage to the drow sorcerer. All right, cool. You did your damage. All right, you're closing in to square up with the 3 drow blade dancers. Fighter, roll defend, right? And we can move from there. So it's like you kind of reward the players for this fictional position by giving them a free shot. Then, if the shot is tricky or they are under some sort of pressure, then we roll. And on a 10 or more, they just do their damage. On a 7, 8, or 9, we get these 4 options. The one is one that was always from Dungeon World, which was you use up some of your ammo. And again, we don't track ammo in this game like 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots, 5 shots, 6 shots. You either have like, depends on the weapon, but like you either have a lot of arrows, a few arrows left, 1 arrow left, right? It's very, you know, specific, very, you know, drastic. Now, this next one seems kind of weird. But this basically says, look, I'm going to let you deal your damage, but something has to happen first, right? You're basically telling them the requirements and then asking them what they do. You know, you're basically saying, all right, you've got your bow up, you've got them pegged to rights, but oh shit, you know, your ally's in the way and you have to hold until you can get them clear, or until you can get them out from behind the cover, or until, you know, you can get free of the grasping roots that are pulling at your boots. You basically tell them, if you can deal with this thing, this problem, this situation, okay, to get a clear shot, then you can immediately deal your damage. It's almost like you've readied to shoot and you're guaranteed to hit. You just need to deal with this one problem. And the reason why this is a great move as a GM, or as a player, I should say, is because it prompts action. Now the players know, oh, you know, we can, you know, if we do this one thing, the ranger or the archer person gets to do automatic damage. That's great. That's great. It's also a great, yes, exactly. It's also an opportunity to move the spotlight and have another player now take that opportunity to open up the shot, right? So, you know, I talk about the, you know, the evil roots that are ripping and pulling at the rangers, you know, boots and legs. And then like the druid character comes in and says, can I like speak words of command to the plants and try to overwhelm the dark energy and cause them to calm? And I'm like, you absolutely can, you know, make some move or do some nonsense. They succeed. And then I go, your shot's clear. And then they automatically deal their damage, right? So it sets up this cool, you know, riff give and take, back and forth, cutting between different characters, making everybody feel like they're sort of tag teaming and working together. Alternatively, you could, if you don't want to wait, you could just move and do something to get yourself in a position to shoot, but doing so puts you into danger. Now, again, remember, the player gets to make this decision, right? So again, this is still prompting further player action, right? Because I describe how, you know, your allies are in the way, there's a ferocious melee, and you say, can I break left and move around the flank so I can get a clear shot at the Drow Sorcerer? And I say, yeah, you can do that, okay? But you're going to be giving up your covered position, and you're going to be putting yourself right next to that giant spider. And the player says, okay, I'm okay with that, right? And so you move, you get your shot, you deal your damage. Don't be surprised when I say, and now the giant spider is you know, closing in on your position. And lastly, you can rush the shot and deal your damage, leading to a cost or complication of the GM's choice. So this is just the generic, like, defy danger, right? Something goes wrong that doesn't necessarily involve your fictional positioning. This is, you know, for lack of a better word, this is, you know, your bowstring snaps, or, you know, you have some sort of other problem. This is kind of a catch-all, but generically speaking, I like the middle two better. Anyways, this is a really great move. And, you know, so again, here we can see here, deplete your ammo. This is when, okay, so this is another way to think of mechanics in PBTA games. Mechanics, like resources like your ammo, are basically a way in PBTA to say, look, sometimes I don't want to deal with all this narrative bullshit. Sometimes I just want to say, can't I just mark something on my character sheet and we can just say that I did it? Sometimes you just want to deal your damage. And okay, if you're fine just marking the checkbox that you've used up some of your ammo on your sheet, you get to just do your damage and we don't have to deal with any of this fictional bullshit. Sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's nice to have that gamist ability. You know, and obviously it's tied to the fiction because your ammo is going down. But like sometimes it's just nice to have that ability. All right. And here's Jeremy describing all the stuff that I just described. And here's the rush the shot. This is where you just deal your damage, but basically the GM makes a move. And then we can see all the classic GM moves. Like maybe you're throwing a spear and your spear breaks. Maybe something happens, like, you know, you shoot your target and the magic spell that the sorcerer was casting gets cast, but, you know, wild and uncontrolled. And instead of the fireball shooting into your group, instead, living flames begin coalescing around the sorcerer's form as a wild fire elemental spirit begins to take form. Oops. You know, or you could show a downside, such as rolling damage with disadvantage. Tristan Evans, you are well set to play PBTA, sir. So again, this is kind of just your everything else, you know, basically, which is, okay, you do it, but there's some sort of downside. You're less effective, right? It has a cost or it has a consequence, just like defying danger. Like if you can genericize 7, 8, and 9 as lesser success, cost, or complication, you're well equipped to play most PBTA games. Because when push comes to shove, you can literally play all of these games with just defy danger, which is literally what World of Dungeons is by John Harper. And as long as you kind of internalize lesser success or less effect, cost, complication, you're in a good spot. Okay. We only have a couple basic moves left, which is great because it's only 8:30. Wow, look at us. How's everybody doing? Persuade. Now, we have two different persuade moves, one versus NPCs, one versus PCs. When you press or entice an NPC, say what you want them to do or not do. If they have reason to resist, roll plus charisma. On a 10 or higher, they'll do it, or they'll reveal the way that you could convince them to do it. On a 7, 8, or 9, they reveal something that you can do to convince them, but it will be very costly, very tricky, or very distasteful. So a couple of things. Number one, if you ask an NPC to do it, and there's no reason why they wouldn't do it, if they don't have a reason to resist doing it, then we roll. Otherwise, we don't roll, and they just do it, all right? Clarify what they want the NPC to do, and then challenge their approach if it doesn't make any sense. Once the goal is set, decide if the NPC even has a reason to resist. Consider their personality, their background. What do they want? What do they need? On a 10 or higher, weigh their approach versus the NPC's resistance. If the resistance is weak or the PC has a really strong reason, just have the NPC do it. But if you don't think the PC's approach would cut it, reveal the easiest way that the PC could convince them, such as making a blood oath or a promise. Okay? Maybe appealing their ego or a convincing deception. Now, keep in mind, this is not literally the NPC in character telling them this. Okay? It's not like the player is going to go up and say like, it's not like the player is going up to them and being like, listen, Prince, this battle is extremely important. The fate of the realm relies on our victory here. Your forces could make the difference between our victory and utter defeat. You must, nay, I plead with you, please, help us. And the GM says, sounds like you're persuading this NPC. And the player goes, totally. Just to be clear, Edward, what do you want the prince to do? I want the prince to send in his army to help us in this battle. I'm like, okay. Well, does the prince have a reason to resist? Yeah, he's kind of a selfish dick. If he sends in his army, his realm is defenseless. I think he's going to resist. You know what? Roll charisma. And the player rolls a 10 or higher. And I go, okay, you roll a 10 or higher. I could just have the prince say, you're right. But I go, you know what? It's a GM call. This prince is kind of a dick. And I'm going to say, all right. Now, it's not like the prince is going to go, you make a hearted plea, and I hearkened to your words. However, simple logic is not enough to convince me. Rather, you must appeal to my ego, as well as play on my fears, in order to convince me further. Like, the NPC is not telling the player that in character, okay? The game, vis-a-vis the GM, is telling the player what they need to do. I'm basically telling the player, hey, I'm going to make this. I'm going to make this into a role-playing game. We're going to roll dice, and then I'm going to tell you, like scenes from a hat, what you need to do as a player via the way that you play your character, or the way you play your player character, what you need to do in order to turn this NPC from unconvinced to convinced. Then, if you're able to meet the challenge of the role play, okay, by playing the role-playing game, you will have succeeded. See, it's a brave concept. It's a novel concept. It's never been done before. Anyways, and we have a bunch of stuff here, blah, 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 about this, which is all good. And some great examples about this. Note. I mean, yes, it would be better if people just, you know what it would be like, +1 XP. You know what? A great way to think of it is, it's like that movie with Ricky Gervais, right? The Invention of Lying, right? Where like Ed Norton is the traffic cop and he pulls them over and he goes, I think your friend is drunk. And he goes, I'm sorry, officer. Is there anything we can do? And he goes, well, you could bribe me to support my massive cocaine habit, but there's no way that you could afford it, right? Like, because, And, oh, absolutely, Seldon Hari. So again, we've established that there are two, I think, in my opinion, there are two types of players, or, types of people who will not necessarily enjoy this framing. One, or PBTA. One is players who are playing to compete, players who want to win, okay? GMs who want to win. If you want to win, this game is not for you, okay? The second is for players who want pure, unadulterated immersion. I argue that PBTA games are more about engagement than immersion, and they are more about creating dynamic, evolving stories that are bigger than our player characters, rather than they are about sort of simulating or living inside the mind or world of this fictional character. So I think that that it's not for everybody. It's true. Last but not least, it should be noted that it's when you press or entice an NPC. Now, those are important, okay? Because it doesn't say when you talk to an NPC. It doesn't say when you diplomate NPC. It says when you press or entice. What this means is if I go to a king and I say, give me your kingdom and your crown. Okay, well, that is not pressing them, nor is that an enticement. So this move doesn't trigger. It's a subtle difference, but it's one that's important to learn. Okay? I'm not pressing the king. Now, things could be a bit different if the room was full of my personal myrmidons. We've just stormed the king's castle. We've killed most of his royal guards. His trophy, his arranged marriage wife has betrayed him. She was the one who gave him up. I am making a power move. My men are surrounding the throne room. Their swords are drawn. I approach the king and I basically say, your crown or your life. Well, now I would say I'm pressing the king, right? I have fictional authority to now persuade the king through a press that he should give me the crown. Okay? Right. It's the same thing as beating up toddlers, right? When in doubt, think about beating up toddlers. So if a player just walks into the innkeep, the inn and says, innkeeper, I have a high charisma. Give me your inn. Well, this move doesn't trigger. You're neither pressing nor enticing them. On the other hand, if a player walks in and he says, if he Tony Starks it, and, you go into the innkeeper and you say, greetings, innkeep. We need 2 rooms for the night. Sorry, governor. Rooms are all full tonight. And your player goes, all right. I reach down into my backpack and I pull out like a literal, like flour sack full of gold and rubies, and I just dump it onto the onto the thing, and I say, how much does this inn cost? Or like, why don't you retire? I want to buy your inn. Now, if you've ever in doubt of this, okay, go watch the incredible, awesome movie, because you've already all watched it. And by the way, if you're a real player, you already know what movie and what scene I'm about to say. Okay? I'm going to wait in chat to see who gets it first. That's all. That's the only information I get. It's just, I want to show you how we're all on the same level. All right? I'm hoping. I could be wrong, but you all are, I believe, I trust. There's only like 60 of us here, so maybe somebody doesn't get it, but it's like a birth room thing. All right. Batman Begins. Bruce buys the hotel. That isn't what I was thinking of, but that is an excellent advantage. That is an excellent point. So you get credit for that. Okay. You see, I'm buying this hotel and we're going to make some new rules about the pool. So we got a bunch of people saying Batman Begins. You know what? I didn't think of that, but that is an excellent. All right. Think France. But Batman Begins is an excellent example of that. Or it's a terrible movie, but at the end of that one DCU movie where Clark goes, to Bruce and he says, "How did you convince the bank, to forgive the loan on the house?" And then, he goes, I bought the bank." Les Mis, no. I was thinking of the scene from Count of Monte Cristo, where his NPC shows up, or his henchman goes to buy that massive manor, and he goes, "Good evening, sir. I'm here to buy your lovely home." And like the old French guy's like, "Be gone, riffraff, before I have you whipped." And he's like, "You are saying an outrageous thing." And then like the guy goes around to the back of like the massive wagon full of loot and treasure and opens up the door, and gold and gems pool out. And then the next, like, it does a hard cut to the old man, handing over the keys and riding away on the wagon full of treasure. It's the same basic idea. Anyways, it's a great book, and I'm not going to lie, the one with Jim Caviezel, I think, is like a 10 out of 10. I think it's one of the best movies ever. It's not a perfect adaptation, I know, but I think the movie is fantastic, and the book's good too, very long. Great stuff. Oh, you got to see it. You got to see it, Edward. It's fantastic. I mean, the book is really good. It is a bit long, but the movie with Jim Caviezel from, like, I don't know, 2002. 2002. Wow, I got it right. So good, fantastic. You should watch it like tonight. Oh, I haven't seen that one, but I remember seeing it. It was like, wasn't it a foreign language film? Right? The more recent one, I think it was foreign language. I got to watch it. It looked good. I think it was made, I think it was French, or maybe it was Italian. I don't remember, but I remember seeing an ad for it. Anyways, looked good. It looked good. Is this the mandatory vacation? All right. You can also persuade versus PCs. When you press or entice a PC and they resist, ask their player, "Is there any way I could possibly get you to do this, yes or no?" And if they say no, drop it. If they say yes, you can roll plus charisma. On a 10 or higher, they mark XP if they do what you want. And if they don't, they must say how they could convince them. On a 7, 8, or 9, they mark XP if they do what you want, but they can refuse or make a counter offer if they like. Okay, so already, this is going to be a really weird move for a lot of people. This is an engagement move. It is not an immersion move. This move is in pure defiance of the idea that you are, we talked about, so this actually, PBTA in some ways does two things that involve sort of omnipotence and omniscience. It removes the idea that the GM is the omnipotent, omniscient God of the universe. But it also removes the idea that you, the player, are the omniscient, omnipotent God of your player character. And it allows you to disclaim decision-making about your character's decision. But the most important part about this move is that it starts with this. There is no way that you can go to a player and press them into doing something that at the end of the day, they don't want to do. Right? This gets down to, like, actually, exactly, this is basically exactly the move that I was describing that Smith made up when we were playing Legend of the Five Rings. Right? His character, a samurai, wanted to go and fight these demons that he was completely unequipped to fight, and it probably would result in his death. When another player tried to convince him not to do it, basically the player, and Smith was like, I don't know if I'm convinced by that. You know what? We'll let the dice decide. We'll let your character's skill against my character's stubbornness, and we'll roll, because I'm interested in finding out myself. And we get to roll. Now, if they say yes, you can roll plus charisma. On a 10 or higher, they mark XP if they do what you want. Okay? And if they don't do what you want, they must say how you could convince them to do it. On a 7, 8, or 9, they mark XP if they do what you want, but they can refuse or make a counter offer if they like. Now, Epiphany says, but couldn't players just use this on each other over and over again to power level? Yes, if they are trying to win the game. But, and let's be real here, this is subtly, this is creating an incentive. It's creating an incentive for your players to not always agree with each other and to sometimes lean into this move and to allow this move to occur. By metagaming, okay, aka by metagaming, by being like, I want to get experience points, your players are allowing the game to become a little bit more feral, a little bit more unsure, a little bit more uncertain. Because remember, a 6- can still occur. Yes, it could be quantum, but the players could be having a conversation about whether or not, you can convince them to betray the king. And then suddenly the king's guard rush in and arrest you both for treason. Right? And reveal that a once trusted NPC has actually betrayed them. And the other player is going to be like, no, I wasn't involved with any of this. We were just talking. And it's like, right? It's because it's not Now, see, here's the thing. If this was a diplomacy check, if it was just a diplomacy check, you're right, that would be bullshit. How come I was talking to this person? Because I was talking to this person and I rolled low, it made the king's guards bust in the door. Because it's not representing that. All right? This move is sort of like a fork in the road in the story. It doesn't represent or simulate anything. Okay? Also, don't be a weasel. Yeah, that's true. And again, Jeremy, with great explanation. The first part of this move, where the first player asks if they could possibly convince, is crucial. It prevents the mechanic from pressuring a player into doing something that they don't think their character would do. At the end of the day, this does give you, right, full authority over your character to say no, which is great. But what it does is allows you as a player to opt in to disclaiming decision-making. It basically says you can always decide what your character does and what your character is convinced by. But if you're willing, if you'll allow us to bribe you into rolling the dice, we're willing to give you an XP for it. If you're willing. You don't have to. And there is a meta game min-max sort of encouragement here, which basically says the more you allow yourself to live and die and breathe and, by the roll of the dice, you're going to earn more experience points than a player who doesn't. And that is deliberate. It's the same reason why you get an experience points when you roll a 6-. I don't understand. Why would my character, ever try to do that? It's rolling with dexterity or constitution, and my character's constitution is -1 or -2. I'm bad at that. Why would I ever want to even trigger that if I could? Oh, because if I roll it, I'm likely going to roll a 6-, which means that the GM will get to make a move, which means that the story is going to get more interesting and complicated and messy and fun. And because of all of that terrible stuff, like fun and complications and messiness and drama, I get to mark an experience point. So yeah, those mechanics are designed to allow to kind of encourage the characters to lean into this, but it doesn't force them. And that's critical. Okay. And our last basic move, just as we come across 9 o'clock, there are a couple special moves, which we'll cover, is Seek Insight. When you study a situation or a person, look to the GM for insight. Roll plus wisdom. Let's be very clear before we even go down the rest of this. This move is like having a sidebar with the GM. okay? It's like, look, I get that you told me about all this other stuff, but can we just talk straight up, you know? Can I just ask you on the side, like, yes, in character, right? Like my character's looking around, looking, you know, or you know, trying to, you know, you're saying things in character about this NPC. I get that, but I just want to ask you, you know, GM directly, like over here on the side. Like, can we just kind of lean over here and be like, okay, listen, what is this person getting at? Like, what's about to happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's just tell me, GM, what's about to happen? Okay. Well, wait. So who's really in control here? Okay. And so what should I be on the lookout for? Okay, great. Cool. All right. Now we can go back to playing, right? So this is kind of the meta-gamey cheat move. All right. So don't call for this move just because a player asks what they see or hear. Notice what this move triggers on. When they look to the GM for insight, this is where the player's looking at you and they're like, I have no idea what's going on. Please just tell me, you know, what, please tell me. Like, I just need help. I don't understand. Okay. And so don't trigger this just because a player is asking what they see or hear. That's in character, right? That's in fiction. You know, you just tell them what they see and hear. Call for it when they're looking to you to put the pieces together or when they need help and they're like trying to figure out what's going on. Okay. Like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. I really don't. I'm confused. Look, I'm going to tell me like what's going on here. And that's when you make this move. Okay. If the player does say, look, I'm just seeking insight, and then you could still tie it back to the fiction. You're still required to tell that to the fiction. You're like, okay, well, what does that look like? And you're like, I'm going to really study this person. I'm going to look at the body language between all these characters. Because like, here's the problem. A lot of people, okay, side tangent. We're going off on a side tangent here. I got to go to my full screen for the side tangent. You know what I need? There's so much I need to do. I just had a moment of like extreme anxiety just because I have so much to do. Sorry. It's like 3 weeks to NightCon. I got fucked by my artist. One of my patrons is trying to save my ass. And yeah, I need like a tangent overlay, George. I definitely need a tangent overlay. It's a side tangent. Hey, by the way, remember, if you want to support us and, you know, money's tight and you do have Amazon Prime, you can support us for free on Twitch, twitch.tv/nightsoflastcall. Yes, exactly. So finally, did we get a final headcount, Boothby? I'm trying. Well, you know what, Gall? It's because, you know, I'm having to spend money for this NightCon thing. It's expensive. Yeah, I mean, medication helps. So there's that. It's mostly just I have a lot of plate spinning right now, right? Like there's stuff I want to do around the house. There's stuff I need to do for the channel. There's stuff I need to do for my profitability. There's stuff I need to do for NightCon. I'm kicking off 4 or 5 new campaigns for my patrons. You know, it's a lot. It's just a lot. All right. Okay. All right. So, hey, thank you for the subscription with Prime. I appreciate it. Right, I'm always streaming a lot. You know, like, again, I had like a mini rant the other day because I was like, it just bothers me. Well, not bothers me, but it bothers me that like I will literally like last week I streamed, I think like 25 hours or something like that. And I'm like, somehow that just doesn't feel like enough, you know? So I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, right. Okay. I was talking about Seek Insight. So here's the problem. A lot of people will play role-playing games, and they will think that there's something noble or, you know, I mean, I'm kind of shitting on play. I'm kind of shitting on Fruitful Void here and OSR play. And I don't mean to, but I am going to do it a little bit. But people do this with 5th edition as well. They'll be like, oh, players who use sense motive, you know, that's lame. Like, that's very gamist of you, you know. Instead, as a GM, I'm going to just describe this NPC. I'm going to talk as them, and I might even describe what they're doing a little bit. I'm going to use vocal intonation. And I'm going to basically be telling the players straight up that this person is, you know, going to betray them. And shocker, it turns out, one, most GMs aren't very good at communicating that or doing that, and they're not very good at acting. And number two, it turns out that most players are very bad at, I don't know, picking up on subtle body language clues of an imagined third party, you know, of that you're pretending exists, and you're doing it through your clumsy language that you're sort of making up on the spot. And you're a player, and you're playing over a fucking Zoom call meeting, and you're expecting that somehow the players are going to figure this out. No. You know what? Shocker. Spoiler alert. They're not going to get it. They're not going to, I don't know, you know, Sherlock Holmes this shit. They're just not going to get it. The player could even be really good at that and still not get it, because communication is messy, and there's 5 other players who are trying to play the game, and your role playing may not be as good or even effective as you think it is. And the GM's mic clipped, so they lost most of the exposition. So the fact of the matter is, I hate to tell you, GMs, I don't care how good you are. Most of the time, your players have no fucking clue about what's going on at all. They don't. And you trying to stay immersed and in character and 4D or whatever that thing is, that 4D role playing, and be like, I never want to talk out of character. I want to be fully immersed, and we're only going to do things in character. You know what that's going to lead to? A lot of confused fucking players, because they just don't get what's going on. Okay? And I get it. It's hard. But the fact of the matter is, players need information to be able to make decisions. And agency depends on making informed decisions. Not just making decisions, making informed decisions. So the reason that it's so important that we have access to a move like Seek Insight is so that you give the players this really cool exposition, and you're like, huh, I've given everything away. All they have to do is figure out that when I said that, I was actually secretly kind of, you know, doing a little bit of increased vocal fry. And because this character is from Southern Qualinesti, whenever they speak and pronounce it wrong, clearly this person must not be from Southern Qualinesti, which clearly means that they're a polymorph black dragon who has snuck in, and now that they're doing something completely different, it's like, no, they're never going to figure that out. They're never, ever going to figure that out. What is... we got a $200 Canadian donation from the one, the only, the Gold Cat. Stone Month, Stonetop Forever, Knights of Last Stonetop, Stone Knight Con. Well, that is a very extremely generous donation, considering that you've already donated and talked about this game forever. Gull, thank you so much. Yes, Canada Bucks. That was a hyper toonie, as they call it. I think that's what they call it up north. It's a hyper toonie. I'm very, very, very thankful of that. Thank you. That definitely keeps the Stone hype train going. You know, there's a good chance, Gull, that we will make it to NightCon. I'll promise you this, Gull. If we make it to NightCon and we still haven't finished Stonetop, I will do a Stonetop stream from NightCon. With, like, you know, with people live in the audience. There we go. That's what I'll do. I was wondering why it made you pay Canadian as well, but hey, you know what? Right. You know what? You know what? We'll do it better. I'll just go around and aggressively, like, we'll do it during the meat pile stream. There'll be 26 people in a private event room, and we'll try to talk about PBTA. Yes, Gull is in 2 patron games, so he's currently tapped out to be playing on both Saturdays and Sundays for the foreseeable future. Wonderful. You know, I don't know why that reminds me, but Smith, again, beautiful, lovely, awesome Aaron Smith from this channel. He got married on 11/11/11, and I remember that he picked that date, / he and his wife picked that date because it was the day that was it Skyrim or Oblivion came out? One of those two came out on I think I don't remember. I think it was Skyrim. I think Skyrim came out in 2011. And so they picked that as their wedding date, and that way Michaela said, so Aaron will never forget our wedding date or anniversary because it was the day that Skyrim came out. So not only did they do their wedding on the night that Skyrim came out, but then when they went on their honeymoon the next day, they went on their honeymoon immediately, right? They left for their honeymoon that month, you know, the following Monday or whatever. They brought an Xbox or whatever, along with them on the honeymoon so that Smith could play Skyrim while on their honeymoon. Listen, all I'm saying is, Kim and Tass, okay? When you press or entice a PC and they resist, ask their player, could I possibly get you to do this? If the answer is yes or no, if they say no, drop it. Otherwise, maybe it's time to roll plus charisma. That's all I'm going to say, okay? Look, explore the space. You're like, okay, you're like, all right. So here's the thing. I have this kink. I've never really explored it before. Are you open to doing it? Anyways, sorry.
Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's game.
Yeah. Again, I love the art and the style in this game. It's beautiful. It's consistent. It's tonally correct. It's very diverse. It's just a great piece of art. It's just so great. And it fits the game's style and tone beautifully. It feels both modern, but also classic. And by classic, I mean, like, it feels like a classic PBTA game. Like, this feels like, you know, it feels like a Dungeon World book, just, or a Powered by the, you know, Monster Heart books, you know, which I appreciate a lot. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. But is it Iron Age appropriate? I don't know. Let me see. Uh-oh, she's got some sort of belt device thing. Did they have those in the Iron Age? So you know what? I'm going to read this. So the swine is dead. I don't know what the swine is, or the swine. Some sort of monster, maybe? I don't know. The swine is dead. The children rescued, and they're getting ready to head home. But Vahid doesn't want to go. There's so much to learn here. We can't just leave. Rihanna is resisting, so I direct Vahid's player to this move. He asks her player if he could possibly convince her. Rihanna players very quickly says no. I ask what that looks like, how Vahid can tell that she won't budge. Oh, I lose it. Damn it, Vahid. We're going, and that's final. Vahid replies with, fine, leave then, but I'm staying. I can make my own way home. Rihanna sighs, pinches the brow of her nose, right? That's that literally that art. No, Vahid, you won't. You will get lost and you will die. Please come with us. Now she's starting to press him, but Vahid doesn't cave. You could convince me, but you'll have to roll, and I'll interfere with your roll by being stubborn as hell. Rihanna says she'll roll persuade, and Vahid rolls to interfere against the move to persuade himself, which is only happening because he's allowing it to happen. He gets an 11, and Rihanna decides to keep pressuring him and will roll with disadvantage. As she's about to roll, I aid, says Bloodwind. I step up behind Rihanna and give him the doe eyes. Vahid, please. We all agree that this would help, and the advantage from her aid cancels out the disadvantage from Vahid's interfering. Now, a lot of this might be looking like we're just doing one big circle jerk. We're not. We're using the mechanics of the game to give context, depth, and texture to the fiction that we are dynamically creating together. Okay, so I'm going to roll plus charisma then, right? That's it. It is, and she gets a 10. If Vahid agrees to come now, and with no more discussion, he'll get to mark XP. But if he does choose to refuse, he has to reveal how they could convince him. Okay. I'll come, but only if you let me put sanctifying marks on the entrances and promise me that we'll come back to explore this place. And we don't tell anyone else about it. Deal? I clarify that he's revealing how they can convince him rather than agreeing outright. If you want the XP, you have to agree just straight up. If you set these conditions and they agree to them, they're honor bound to them, but you don't get the XP. And he says, yep, I'm okay with that. Fine, says Rihanna. You've got 10 minutes. Go and make your marks. Bloodwind, keep an eye on him. Right? This was one big, gigantic circle jerk, but this is, again, why, and I've struggled to explain this. I haven't really actually gone into great detail about it because I don't think I would do a good enough job of explaining it. But this is why I love Oath and Arcs, the board games, because both Oath and Arcs are approaching this, whatever this is. They're approaching it from the board game side of things, and PBTA and Stonetop are approaching it from the role playing game side of things. But they're both approaching this emergent, mechanics-driven fictional narrative. It's what Mike Underwood from Daggerheart's design team calls the interweaving of fiction and mechanics, and that the thread of play is weaving back and forth between mechanic to fiction, from mechanic to fiction, from mechanic to fiction, from fiction to mechanic, back and forth, weaving the mechanics and the fiction together into this whole new thing, which we call, right, the story. And that's what's really cool about it. Yes, and yes. So Jordan Peacock says Oath and Arcs are amazing for emergent storytelling as well as having opt-in mechanics. Jordan, they really are. And they're now I will freely admit that Oath and Arcs, being board games, are a little bit more board gamey, right? But the fact is that you are going to end up with a story. And there's a weird component of Oath and Arcs where you're not playing as much to win so much as you're playing to create a story, but in a weird way, by playing to win and just following the rules of Oath and Arcs, you will create a story and it'll be compelling. And the mechanics create these situations that lead to compelling emergent storytelling. It's what's so cool about it. And PBTA and Stonetop do the same things as well. Absolutely, Nathan. There's a great example of this on it's only visible to our patrons because it occurred during our Saturday crew. When we did our Torchbearer campaigns last year. I ran 2 Torchbearer campaigns. They occurred in the same world. We had a Sunday crew and a Saturday crew, 2 totally different PCs, all adventuring. They were kind of rival adventuring parties, adventuring in the same dungeon. Saturday crew wasn't comfortable with being public on YouTube, so they're only available privately through our Patreon. But if you watch those episodes, there's an incredible conflict, a full conflict scene, just like in Burning Wheel, between 2 players who were both, they were both in it. They wanted this to happen, which was one of the players trying to convince another player to stop being so reckless. And, basically the other player agreed to, have this conflict and basically allow the outcome to determine the course of how they would role play their character going forward. Now, again, totally anti-immersionist, but extremely engaging. Ray, I still owe that final episode. I assume you're talking about the Sunday crew, right? Where they go and try to defeat the dragon sorceress with the dragonbone blade. Yeah, I feel bad about that too, and I do owe that. Arcs is different than last arc, yes. Arcs is a board game by Cole Worley, released formerly by Leader Games and now under the Buried Giant Game Studio line. So. So when you seek insight, you get to ask the GM 3 questions. Note, you're not asking you're not asking the character. You're not doing this in character. Okay. You are just straight up asking the GM. It's a player asking the GM. It's like having a sidebar. Okay. Oh, great. I rolled well. What's about to happen? Oh, they're totally about to betray you. What should I be on the lookout for? Well, the person who seems really unassuming, she's actually a Yuan Ti, hidden under that cloak. She's actually, they're all snake people. They're all snake people. Okay. What here is useful or valuable to me? Well, that Yuan Ti sorceress that we're talking about, she actually has the ruby gem that you've been looking for. Right? I'm just straight up telling the player this. They're asking me, I'm answering honestly. But what about the challenge and you're ruining the whole game? What about the immersion? Right? The challenge doesn't matter, the immersion doesn't matter. And remember, this list is prescriptive. They get to ask from these 7 questions and none other. So she's actually a Yuan Ti. Wait, so she's even hotter now? What? Oh yeah, she's super hot snake person. Slash balance. Oh, Gull got you. Oath or Oath Hammer? Oath, the board game, not Oath Hammer. Oath Hammer, also a great game. I'm looking for a good. This is Oath. So Oath is ostensibly a sort of area control war game. But what it really is in my opinion, it is a legacy storytelling game disguised as an area control war game. And yes, I'm aware that New Foundations is coming. Of course, I kickstarted it. And also, I'm excited about it because it sounds like New Foundations is going to do to Oath what Blighted Reach does to Arcs. Anyways, this is a board game, but it's unlike any board game that you would have ever played before. And it's really cool. Let's see if I have any of my favorite cards here. Oh, I like the Old Oak. That's a good card. Anyways, oh, sorry, I got distracted. All right. So this lets us basically this lets us have fun and play the game. All right. Answer honestly, generously, and helpfully. You'll often need to make up some details. Those details now become true parts of the fiction, right? Yeah, so I haven't really been following along. I've just been so busy, Epiphany, with everything from the channel and just being super busy for all that. So I haven't really been following along with most of the releases and most of the other stuff. Yeah. So Adam says, seek insight, my nemesis, the worst move of all time. Now, Adam, I'm assuming you're saying that because immersion is really important to you. I'm assuming, right? It can be challenging, Sin Mad, occasionally. I'm not gonna lie. It can be challenging. And part of my solution is I repeat details a lot, you know? Like I'll be like, okay, fighter, what are you doing? He's like, I'm rushing over to the orcs and I'm gonna engage them. And I go, okay, the fighter is rushing over to the orcs. Let's go to wizard. We'll get to you in a second, fighter. Wizard, like you see the fighter begin rushing over to the orcs. What are you doing? Before the fighter gets there, I'm going to cast a fireball spell into them. Okay, you begin casting a spell. Okay, you know what? The orcs begin moving down the hillside. Cleric. All right, you see the fighter. He's rushing over to the orcs. The wizard is twisting their hands and a fireball spell is beginning to form. It looks like the fireball will get there just before there. The fighter is closing in. Orcs are coming down the hill. What do you do, cleric? I do a lot of that. I will repeat details a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot. Yes, it can also it can suck to be put on the spot. It can also make GMs uncomfortable, right? To just have to spill the beans and just basically give the player meta knowledge. There you go. Yes, immersion is maybe too strong a label. I don't like meta knowledge. See, and I just you know. So, by the way, sometimes the only honest answer is nothing. You know, there's nothing to look out for. This place is actually quite safe. No one's in control. It's a goddamn free-for-all, right? Those answers are still removing doubt and are still clarifying the situation, right? And again, fantastic list of examples and all that information. All right, so those are the basic moves of Stonetop, and those are going to be the ones you're going to go to the most. So now, real quick, before we go and do the 4 special moves, one of which, by the way, is advantage disadvantage. It's not really that's not going to take as much time. I do want to do a poll really quickly, which is a question. Going to my poll, going to my poll, going to my poll, going to my poll. Here's my poll. Okay. Which all right. Resetting the poll, and the poll is up. All right. Which basic move do you think you would have the hardest time adjudicating or running? Clash, the strength move. Let fly, the dexterity move. Defend, the constitution move. Know things, the intelligence move. Seek insight, the wisdom move. Or persuade, the charisma move. Remember, you can put a number in chat, and that will cast your vote. I am going to sip some of this soda. Defy Danger is a whole separate thing. If you know what, I'll be honest with you, +1 XP. If you have a hard time running Defy Danger, well, we got other problems. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, okay. Yes, it's really cool. Just hit like back in your chat and then fast forward, and you'll catch up with us in about an hour. Actually, we are done with the basic moves. So we actually are going to probably end this pretty early tonight, which is actually really cool. Wow, Know Things is the number 1. Wow. Okay, this is I think this is actually very interesting and very useful. Wow. Okay. Know Things for sure. I can't decide if you put Clash just to be a troll, Boothby. I don't want to mix. You know, the peanut butter with the tuna fish, Ray Tales. My combat as win group would be the hardest to get to come to grips with Clash. What do you mean I can't clash with the dragon? Okay, you know what? That's actually a really good answer. That's a really good answer, Booth. And it's a good way of kind of framing that, you know? Your bow explodes. Yes. Okay. So No Things is obviously, undoubtedly the clear winner in terms of which ones you would think you would have the hardest time, you know? Interesting. The meta stuff, according to Booth, they would have no problem with. Interesting. That's good. That's kind of cool. You're like, yes. Oh, we're not talking about in fiction. We're just describing things outside of the fiction and meta. You're like, we are down for that. So Adam wants to notify that they did not vote for Seek Insight. It's easy enough to resolve. They just don't like it. Totally fair. I should also add that you, as a GM, get to set the tone of your game, you know, by what you allow things to be clashed or not. Okay, like, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. You know, I'm going to use D&D terms. Okay, like, if you know the players go to fight an ogre, and, you know, with their sword, and you say, you know, that's not a clash. You are kind of setting the tone of that, like, yeah, it turns out fighting a 10-foot tall, 1,000-pound muscle-bound brute, not even something that is considered a fair fight. And, you know, in order to even clash with them, you would have to do something to have some sort of advantage, positional, the right weapon, something, you know. On the other hand, if the players go to clash with, you know, a 3-headed manticore or something, or a hydra, and you go, yeah, you go up with your swords, hacking and flashing, roll clash, you and the hydra dance and weave, you know, heads are snapping and biting, roll your damage. You're setting the tone for your game by basically saying, yeah, you're a badass, you can go clash with the hydra, right? That could be something, right? If you think the heavy playbook has the fictional positioning and weight in your game to be able to go clash with the dragon or whatever that maybe other characters don't have, then yeah, Declan, I think that's a good way of saying it. If somebody says, wait, why can't I clash with the dragon? It's like, well, because you're not wielding a 6-foot-long piece of steel, nor are you encased in head to toe, right, in you know, a chain hauberk. You know, you're just a guy with a knife. So that's a really good example there. Yeah. All right, very interesting. Yes, you have insufficient thews. All right, so we're going to take a look at the special moves. Again, these are always in play, but they often affect other moves or are triggered only by very special circumstances. One is advantage and disadvantage, which, you know, if we've played 5e D&D, we know what this is, right? We roll an extra die, we discard the lowest or the highest, or if we have both of them, they cancel each other out. They don't stack. You either have it or you don't, and if you have it, they stack. If you and your players really, really want to get into counting how many instances of advantage you have and disadvantage have, you can. It won't break your game, but it might slow it down. So, pretty basic. Note that for advantage and damage, disadvantage on a damage roll your main die damage type and discard the lower one. Then roll any bonus dice. Okay. In many RPGs, the GM routinely applies bonuses or penalties to player rolls to reflect the difficulty or ease of a task. In Stonetop, you can apply advantage or disadvantage on the fly to do the same things, but do so sparingly. It undercuts the impact of moves, arcana, and abilities, especially ones that specifically grant advantage or disadvantage. Consider the fact that giving advantage or disadvantage should really be reserved for truly something disadvantageous or advantageous, right? Burn brightly. Now, this is unique, as far as I know, to Stonetop. I don't recall it from Dungeon World at all. Maybe it's in like Homebrew World or something, but if you have enough XP to level up, which means you have enough XP banked to be able to level up, you can burn your XP after any roll you make to add +1 to that roll. So this allows you to change the roll afterwards. And +1 is a lot. And the most you can do this, by the way, is only +1. But this means that if you roll a 6, you could turn it to a 7. And if you roll a 9, you could turn it to a 10. And by the way, that's the only time you would ever do this. There's no advantage from going from a 4 to a 5 or from an 8 to a 9. If you roll a 6, you get a total of a 6. You could increase it to 7 and change a miss to a weak hit. Or you could go from a 9 to a 10 to a strong hit. Players can't level up while they're out on an expedition, which means that they might end up accumulating a bunch of surplus XP. This move lets them spend some of that XP to ensure success. The fact that PCs can burn brightly also helps slow down the rate at which PCs level up, and it helps prevent double leveling. It also very subtly tips things in the player's favor once they've been in the field for a long time and suffered a number of setbacks. Whenever, we're at keep an eye for those 6s and 9s and ask them if they want to burn bright. And if they have enough, they'll probably do it. So there's like a lot of things going on with this move. One, it's a little bit of, protagonist plot armor, right? Like giving the PCs that little bit of advantage. Number 2, it kind of slows down the level rate of your game, which is cool. Note, you can only burn bright on your own self. You can't spend it to improve another player's roll, which is important. End of session. When a session ends, technically this is a move. And really what it means is there's a mechanical procedure, okay? When a session ends, point out how you demonstrated or struggled with your instinct. If you can, mark an XP. Say how your relationship with or an opinion of a PC, NPC, or group has changed. If you can, mark XP. Now, it's funny that Simon says, I doubt players will spend their XP for bonuses, to be honest. And I agree with Galt. In my experience, they regularly do. I have players who will... I have had players in D&D campaigns before who asked if they could, like, drain... I mean, again, Simon, I'm kind of curious. Did you play 3rd edition D&D? Because I played 3rd edition D&D, and a lot of my players did, and I played a wizard a lot of times. And let me tell you something. If I could have de-leveled from spending my XP to cast spells and or make magical items, I would have. The game didn't allow me to. And so I would frequently spend all of my XP to the point where I was literally at the minimum I needed to be, let's say, level 8. Because the game wouldn't let me de-level from spending XP. That being said, I've had players before who have like asked if they could, de-level to like summon deep and channel their player's life energy just to be able to cast one more fireball. Like, I mean, I've had players like practically begging me on their hands and knees, like, please, I will do anything to turn this hit into a crit, please. Anyways, so what does this mean? It means if you want to metagame and if you want to win Stonetop, you need to demonstrate or struggle with your instincts. You need to explore your relationships with PCs or NPCs. You need to learn more about the world and its history. You need to defeat threats to Stonetop. You need to improve your relationship with your neighbors. And you need to try to make Stonetop the most pimpinest Iron Age village of all time. Then go around and praise something about the session. And then, then do stars and wishes, right? What did you like? Call it out. And then, offer up a wish. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What do you want a chance to do? How would you handle something different, maybe in a different way? So, this is a ritual. It is a reflection on the game session. Also note, the other thing that's nice about Burning Bright is like it has a good chance, right? Since you can only spend it if you're above the threshold, it means that people who maybe are advancing faster than other players, might be that'll help keep them more in line with some of the people who aren't leveling up as quickly. All right, lastly, Death's Door. When you are dying, you glimpse the last door and the Lady of Crows. Describe them. Then just do a straight up 2d6 roll. No bonuses. Just straight up 2d6. On a 10 or higher, you come back to Land of the Living, return with 1 hit point, but tell us how your brush with death has marked you, right? Now, mechanically, that might not do anything, but remember, the mechanics flow from the fiction. On a 7 through 9, the lady waves you off. You're no longer dying, but you're out of the action. So what does this mean? It means most of the time, like 60% of the time, you are not going to die when you get to 0 hit points. On a 10 or higher, you actually pop back into the action. You're at 1 hit point, but you pop back into the action. On a 7, 8, or 9, look, you're going to have to set this fight out. You died, but you didn't fully die. On a 6 or minus, though, your time has come. Choose one. Make one last move as if you rolled a 12 plus, then step through the last door. Basically, you get to go out with a crit. Or, if you're not done yet, you can refuse to go with death and come back as either a ghost or a zombie. Or you can instead call upon one of the great evil demonic power of the things below and beseech it to help you avoid death, and you become a thrall. Now, obviously, these are pretty extreme, and there's a lot of people who, may not, be interested in saving their character. And so they get to choose, because you're like, why would anyone ever pick this one when you could just choose, Okay, seriously, what happened? Hold on 1 second. There was a question of whether or not something was being burned. Okay, so what was I saying? Right. So, again, a player may decide, I don't want to be a zombie and I don't want to be a thrall. I just want to go out, and the game basically, and by the way, one of the things I've come to realize is I do not like Risk It All move from Daggerheart. Because I don't like the way that it interfaces with the game. I would much prefer it to be like, hey, you get a chance to avoid death, and if you don't avoid death, then you can choose to go out. I think Risk It All is potentially problematic. Any case, that's it. Now, there are a bunch of other player moves that players might make, right? Like moves involving the village, moves involving going on a journey, right? Moves involving controlling and working with your followers. But these are the basic moves, right? These moves only come up when you are doing a journey. If your characters are, talking in town or talking with each other or doing stuff for the town or going, if you're in a dungeon or a ruin, these things aren't going to really come up. These are done when your characters are traveling overland. Same thing with these moves. When you're out in the field, you're not going to be worrying about bolstering the town or mustering the Rohirrim or, the seasons changing. That's going to be more of your, kind of downtime activity stuff. And then lastly, these obviously only matter if you have followers, which you may not have. So some of these moves may never come up, and then when they do come up, it's okay. You don't need to literally remember all of these moves because 9 times out of 10, right, expedition moves and home front moves are probably going to be a more like montagey / slower paced part of the game. And so I think it's totally fine for that to be a moment like where your characters are going to go and have to look things up. Like, you know, we're going to be playing the One Ring, our first session this Sunday. And I don't necessarily know, you know, how exactly how all of, let's say, the journey events work exactly. You know, I need to look them up. But that's okay, because like a journey is representing a week or more's worth of time passing. So it's okay that, you know, it feels maybe a little bit slower paced, and you can kind of take the time a little bit more to flip through books. The time when it feels really bad to be flipping through the books is when the game is supposed to be at this breakneck tension pace combat, you know, running away from a collapsing ruin. And when you get stuck in that point, looking through and flipping through a book, it's tough, you know. Ray says, I had 3 out of 4 Daggerheart PCs risk it all last week. 2 of them were successful and healed their hit points of stress. The third one died. And again, here's the sort of general note. If a character does something that could meet the trigger for more than one specific move, use whichever one seems most applicable. In general, a more specific move takes precedence over a more generic move. And everything pretty much takes precedence over Defy Danger. Defy Danger is, again, that sort of default. You have nothing else to do. You're definitely doing something that is risky and chancy and has stakes. But if it doesn't apply to anything else, we're defying danger, which is why World of Dungeons is also known as Defy Danger the game, because it literally gets rid of every single move in the game and basically only keeps Defy Danger. Now, Book 2, which we will eventually get to because people paid for it, contains dozens of custom moves as well as advice and information about how to make your own move. Now, we're not going to get too much into this, but, you know, this is an area that I will freely admit I don't use and haven't really used that much. I have not really used custom moves maybe like I should have. The idea of custom moves might be you might make a move that is specific and unique to this one set of ancient standing stones, right? And it's like when you stand, you know, when you stand in the menhirs of Dolmenwood on a full moon, you know, roll plus wisdom, you know, and you know, it's a kind of a cool way, right, of tying your fiction back to the mechanics and making something feel a little bit more, you know, disclaimed of decision making, putting a little bit more emphasis on the mechanics of the game and allowing you know, people to expand from this. Hardrick says, my table must be playing Daggerheart wrong. How is everyone dying so much? I've heard a lot. I've heard like both ends of the spectrum, Hardrick. I've heard like, oh yeah, my group is making, you know, risk it all moves every session. But I've also heard groups being like, yeah, no one's even come close to dying. So you're right. There must be something going on. You know, so for example, a custom move might apply to a specific person or a specific event. It's one of the areas where GMs might spend some of their prep time in order to add a little bit more mechanical crunch to an area. When you stand at the crossroads under the new moon and call out for the departed by name, roll and add +1 if you are tied to them by blood, +1 if you bear one of their possessions, and +1 if you offer food or drink that they loved. On a 10 or higher, their shade appears, but pick one of these. On a 7 through 9, the shade appears, but pick 2, right? Now again, if this move didn't exist, and by default it kind of doesn't, when the players went and stood at the crossroads and called out the departed by name, what would happen? Well, the GM would just tell you what happened. The GM would make a move. This is a way to sort of basically say, I don't want the GM to make a move. The GM, by the way, makes this move. So it's the GM saying, I don't want to decide. I want this to be a mechanic. I kind of want to be surprised. I kind of want to be out of the decision loop. And I want to let the players and I kind of find out together. So it's a way to sort of make the game a little bit more feral. The downside is that it means the game's a little bit more complicated. It means that you as the GM have to do a little bit more prep. And if I'm being completely honest with you, one of the reasons I don't use custom moves that much is because I'm lazy and I don't want to prep and I don't want to prepare stuff, you know? Right. Are you saying I can't stand under the crossroads at the new moon and call that a part of my name unless I have this move spoiled out? Lame. Yeah. So. But anyways, so custom moves can be very, very powerful because, you know, like I always say, right? You know, I always say what gets repeat, you know, what gets rewarded gets repeated and what gets measured gets managed, but also what gets mechanics, right, gets mentioned. So there's an idea that by creating mechanics for something, you're sort of giving it, and you know, a form of artificial importance. But I think the really important part is that it gives yes, exactly, Nathan. It gives a way for the GM to basically say, I don't want to decide this. I kind of want to find out myself. I'm cool, you know, with this being a role because I kind of think it's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more feral that way, right? And then there's an entire section. Remember, this book is 600 pages long. There's an entire chapter, I think, on writing your own custom moves. And that's found on page 551. So not only does book 2, the setting book, contain dozens of custom moves, right, that might be specifically tied to certain items and places and people, all sorts of nouns, right? Persons, places, and things. But there's also advice in this book about writing your own custom moves if you are so inclined. And that is going to bring us to the end of the chapter on basic moves. So we did it, and we only did it in about 2.5 hours. So look at that. We got better. That's a good way to put it. I feel like some of these feel like GM Easter eggs. If my players do this, I want to see what happens without putting my own biases on it. Exactly. That's what we mean by the GM deciding I want to disclaim decision making, right? Like the GM's like, look, I don't want to have to decide here, you know? And Plus One is quoting Vincent Baker, creator of Apocalypse World, and says, to create a move is to give a particular moment a specific kind of attention. It's true. It is true. But again, I feel like even a lot of the games that have a lot of moves, most of those games still only usually have something like 6 to 8 basic moves. Every other list of moves is usually very specifically tied to a certain type of, a very certain type of scene, you know? That's what I think is really important. That's what I think is so important. Gull the Cat with the random 20 Canadian says, more book, please. All right. Well, when I don't get to rest, I don't get to prepare. You do know that I have a Lord of the Rings game this Sunday that I need to prepare for. Yeah, maybe you're not invested in the One Ring game. Could be. Maybe you just don't care about it, you know. Yeah, it's more than that. It's like $15 or something. I don't know what it is. It's important. It's cool. Right? But I don't know. I don't know what the exchange rate is. Ray Tales, is the One Ring being streamed? It could be. I will say that the players for the One Ring voted to have it both streamed and to have it recorded, like whichever they're fine with. So we could stream it. Granted, it would be streaming at 10 in the morning on Sunday. So I don't know how many people we're actually going to get for it. But we could stream it. I don't know. That's a great question. What do you think? What do you think, Gull? You think we should stream it or should we just record it? There's really no difference because it's like we're not going to be interacting with the chat. You know, that's the most important part. Like, I just don't want I don't want the players, to get distracted. That's all. But I'll be very, honest and be like, unless we're like in a break, I'm not going to read the chat, I'm not even going to have the chat on the screen like we do here in our live streams, But it should be good. I mean, obviously it's going to be the first session. I'm not expecting to, get a ton of stuff done. I have to be at my bridal shower on Sunday, says Kim. Ugh. Bridal showers are like the worst. But Well, you know, the thing Woodland Fellowship is some people enjoy, I mean, to be clear, no chat interaction, Woodland Fellowship. I mean, you're just describing that's Critical Role, you know, that's almost every other actual play. I mean, I'm one of the few live streamers that actually even pays attention to my chat. But I was going to say there's something to be said about, you know, the feeling of a live stream, and even the live stream typically means that you now get to like sort of talk about what's happening with other people who are watching at the same time, which is probably the bigger appeal, right? Like, you know, people can be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But like if people are like, I don't understand how this works, like I'm not gonna be able to stop and answer that. And that's just not something I'm gonna be able to do. Do they? I can't say I watch Critical Role, you know. Yes, very easy. I don't think they have stats for Sauron. I did some spoiler alerts about some of the prep that I was doing for the One Ring last night, so don't watch that stuff if you want to be surprised, as a player or as a participant. But again, it's really more of a situation of drawing blanks, drawing maps and leaving blanks, because I don't 100% know it's going to go. Now that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. I get the sensation that there was a lot to like about Critical Role, like in that first season before they became like super mega popular, right? Like obviously even during season 1, they were still pretty big, right? But not like they are now. Right now their live streams aren't even live, right? They're all pre-recorded, right? Which makes sense, you know, they're all super busy millionaires now, so. But anyways, yeah, so that'll be cool. So we're gonna keep doing some more Stonetop for life. If we don't finish Stonetop before NightCon, I will do a Stonetop stream from Origins, and we'll throw in another first look, and instead of just doing literally endless Stoneheart. Maybe we'll get Pico in there. Pico's been on the top of the list for like a while now. Then it was at the list, and then boom, Stoneheart came in. Gulda Cat dropped like 10 gold or something, and sniped it. Sniping, first look sniping is allowed and encouraged. Listen, people have been asking me for an all spells re-ranked forever, and I still haven't given them that, you know. Boothby says campaign 1 was like an actual play, and Ray says the first season was like watching a normal D&D session. I hated every season after the first. Yeah, it's possible. Shinobi says something about Critical Role feels too corporate for me somehow. I don't know. Yeah, again, I mean, I get that, you know, a lot of people who, you know, our channel started as an actual play. That was the only thing we had, right? There was no live streams. There was no combat and tactics. It was just a Rise of the Rune Lords, Pathfinder 2 actual play. And a lot of people, the reason our channel, you know, kind of got off the ground was because a lot of people said, number one, your audio and video aren't complete shit, which is already puts you light years ahead. Number two, you guys play actually in person. That's awesome. You know, very few people aside from, you know, the Critical Roles of the world play, you know, they're all playing just in a Zoom chat or whatever. And then number three was people were like, we love that you guys are like a bunch of idiot misfits struggling to play a role-playing game, because there's nothing about, you know, this production that is professional or, you know, like even close to proficient. You know, you guys are drinking beer and nobody knows the rules, and the GM is getting exasperated and he's calling his players an idiot. You know, like you're like, it's just like being at home. Take it easy, Tristan. It's good seeing you. Yeah, Origins live stream would be dope. I mean, I'm going to try to do at least 2 live streams from Origins. But again, my main focus while I'm there is going to be, you know, obviously on the people there. Now about that Call of Cthulhu actual play. Yeah. Look, this holiday season, Boothby, we'll have to try to make it happen again. I don't know how or when or where it'll make it happen. We do have a studio again. Remember, we were going to do the one. And then Dread happened instead. I thought that was a good, worthy, sacrificial altar. It was not. It did not please the G-Pote. And then after that, we didn't have a studio because we moved out, so there was nowhere to play. Now I do have a studio. We do have a place to play, so I don't really have an excuse from that perspective anymore. But so there is that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to everyone for hanging out. Special shout out to a Golda Cat who threw down $160 or so US today, just to continue the Stone hype forever, keeping the train going. Again, I am committed to this, but it is always nice that people continue to support it. I do think that this is one of the longest books that we've ever covered on this stream, ever. And I mean, it's digest size and the font is whatever, but I mean, it's technically longer than, Pathfinder 2. I mean, word count, I'm sure it's not, but I will say that the vast majority, don't let the size fool you. The vast majority of the words in this book are just advice, and it's well-earned, time-tested advice. And I think that's really, really awesome because, it's fantastic. We are currently on page 237. We're almost halfway there. But thank you for the Prime subs to everybody who dropped those. Again, remember, if you do have Amazon Prime, you can drop one free sub a month. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's actually really nice. Each Stonetop book is 600 pages. So we have 1,200 pages to go through, Ray. But thank you to Trekkie for the super chats. Thank you to Gundaslav as well for the tips. Junderlin, Edward, Clobster Roll, Scotty F for kicking us off. And thank you to everybody who did the Prime subs as well. That's really awesome of you. So appreciate you so much for that. Now, to be clear, book 2 will be much quicker because it's just all almanacs, correct? And to be fair, Perilous Wilds and Perilous Voids are like some of the best books that have ever been created by any RPG person ever. So, I mean, that's just hot fire, I think those books are solid gold. In fact, a lot of the solid goldness of Perilous Wilds is already in this book because, the expedition rules and all that other stuff are pretty much kind of straight cribbed from Perilous Wilds. So I'm okay with that, though. I'm okay with that. Same with the follower moves. I'm okay with that, too. But yeah. KC wants to know if the second half of this book is mostly tables. No. It's all text. It's all text. It's a lot of GM advice, how to create fronts, threats, building a campaign, creating custom moves. So we're really kind of out of the quote-unquote like player-facing rules of the game. There's a whole section about how do journeys work, aka expeditions, tons of advice. So it's all advice. We're really kind of out of the rules of the game, kinda. We're really more into advice, procedures, frameworks, prep information, how to build sites, how to build fronts, or what they call threats in this game, how to create expeditions, how to run a site, how to create a site, how to troubleshoot a site, how to create a story, how to GM, basically. How play this game, so it should be pretty cool. Monsters, traps, dangers. I don't know if there's a bestiary. That might be in book 2. So again, it's basically like taking that, like what used to be like a handful of pages in Perilous Wilds and turning it into a whole chapter of books, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Treasure, magic items, NPCs, followers, and then all the stuff for the village. How to make the village, how to play the village, how do the village moves work, blah, 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 blah. How to create a compelling Stonetop, how to do all that other stuff. So we have a lot to go through, but because it's more generic advice, you'll notice, like, for example, with these ones, when he would give examples and stuff like that, I would say, I'm not going to read this word for word. Go and buy the book. I'm really more focused on this. So what I'll say is, I think it'll it will take us much less time to get through the last 300 pages of book 1 than it took us to get through the first 300 pages of book 1, because the first 300 pages is mostly like very much player-facing mechanics, all the playbooks, all the moves, right? How do the stats work? What are the core play patterns of the game? What are the GM's moves? How do those work, right? So we've had to kind of break those down. Now it's more like, okay, you know the rules. How do you put this all together? What's the framework, and how do you use that in order to tell compelling Iron Age stories? Because this book is just so Iron Age. In a way, yes, the rest of the book is probably all my PBTA bundled into one really well edited and well written book. So you can either watch me or you could read that. I'm not saying. I mean, in fact, there's advice. I'm not saying I don't. I'm sure I have stuff to learn from this as well. So it's not like I'm some PBTA god or something like that, But again, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about on this channel before, or even as I'm describing it, Jeremy then goes, the next page, we'll get to it, and Jeremy will be like, note to do it, and that's just because, again, this language has been around since the beginning of the game, and there have been blog articles and G+ articles and Reddit posts and stuff all about all this stuff. So we're all just kind of learning from this. But yeah, good, but always, you can always be better. So that's going to do it for me tonight. I'm going to, get something to eat. I'm going to work on my Fabula Ultima prep a little bit more for tomorrow's Fabula Ultima game, which will be a lot of fun. And then Saturday, no real plans. I'm going to put together a little bits of stuff for the tour session, the One Ring session, on Sunday morning. And I'm still struggle bussing, and now I'm under the gun a little bit because I have to wait for new logos to be made, so that I can get shirts ordered and maybe get some banners made for the NightCon, which is in 20 days. 2 weeks is still, or 3 weeks, 3 weeks minus 1 day is still plenty of time to get stuff made, but I was trying to get stuff done ahead of time so I didn't have to rush and do it at the last minute, but we'll see. Yeah. I haven't gotten any leads on any additional sponsorships, so I do need to reach out to them. I will say Tunnels and Trolls check cleared. They did pay me, which is cool. I'm still waiting to get my check, I think, from the Last Arcs people from Succubus, but they were really happy with the performance that we did for them, so that's really cool. So it should be a lot of fun. A lot of games are going to be happening, and of course I'm excited. And I got to decide what I'm actually running at NightCon. I've committed to. I'm playing in / running. We're playing Arcs. We're doing the Blighted Reach 3-game campaign box, and that's going to take 2 sessions. And other than that, I don't have anything planned. So I do need to get some stuff in there, but. I can't think of a game less concessionable than Stonetop. Yeah, this is a game that I don't think lends itself well to a one-shot. That's one of the reasons, Gull, that, I'm not saying that they couldn't be done this way, but it's one of the reasons why the One Ring campaign is 12 sessions long. Number one, I didn't want to make everything 12 sessions long because scheduling is a pain in the ass. People, lose interest or things happen, and then, you're herding cats. So 6 sessions is definitely kind of the sweet spot. But with the One Ring, there's so much about that game that I think is a slow burn. It's the accumulation of shadow. It's the accumulation of shadow scars, right? It's the evolution of the reach of Sauron that I don't think, and it's showing the passage of years that I don't think that if you played that as a 3-session or 4-session game, or even, certainly a one-shot, that you would really get a sense for appreciate. So that's why it's one of the reasons with the One Ring, I wanted to do it as a 12-session game. Now, Blades in the Dark, there's a sense of progression. Of course there is. But I feel like you get more, I still feel like Blades in the Dark is really ultimately about the scores. So as long as you have cool scores, I think you can have a fun Blades in the Dark. That being said, there's a reason I don't really love one-shots, and it's because I like seeing how the mechanics evolve over time, how the players progress, how the mechanics change the players. And I think that's really cool. Not just gaining feats, I don't know what that means, Generalin. For Daggerheart actual play, well, number one, there is no Daggerheart actual play. Oh. You mean like when I run Daggerheart for the patrons. I don't even know yet if we're going to be displaying it because people have to vote for that. Are you going to post a play-by-play? I certainly not. I don't. You mean like go back and write up a play-by-play? No, I'm not going to do. I don't know. Generally, I don't know exactly what you're saying, so maybe you can provide some more context to that. Yeah, Casey, it'll be awesome. I mean, if I had like a way to get internet that didn't cost like $300 a day or something crazy, I would love to like put in a live 24-hour live feed and just have, an open mic and just a live feed of the games. It would be shit because it'd be really loud and confusing and you wouldn't really be able to tell what's going on, but it would be cool, Oh, I'm sure they will, Casey. But again, and I'm not trying to be exclusionary here, but I really do hope that people at NightCon take the opportunity to be present, and to be focused on making connections with people and having these experiences and supping some wine and eating some food and playing some games and rolling some dice because so much of our community experience is online, which is fine, which is great, which is necessary, but to be able to share games at the table with people and to be able to break bread with your fellow gamers, I think is a truly remarkable and important thing. So I really want to encourage people to be, sort of in present. Off premises wine drinking. By the way, if I'm like, let's call it what it is. There's going to be one person who's going to break the rule. It's going to be Bob, and I'm going to be pissed. Like, we already know that this is going to happen, Booth. Like, the one person who's going to break the rule is going to be Bob. So, and I'm going to be mad. So, he's going to have some like hip flask or something. Again, I'm waiting for some specific answers from the Gamma people about scheduling, time, open, when, like, what's the earliest I can get into the room, All right. To be clear, I don't care about them being drunk. I just don't want to get in trouble because there's a no alcohol rule on the premises. So, alrighty, folks, that's going to do it for me for this evening. Thank you again to everyone, especially Golden Cat, for those incredible supports to keep the Stone hype going. We are entering whatever this is week 3 or something of something talking about this game. At this point, I think we've done close to 20 plus hours or something. Maybe 24, 25 hours of covering this game. So by the time we're done, I don't know. Well, we might be reaching all spells ranked levels of stream time. This may have to get its own playtest, or own playlist. But it's a great game, and this is doing the thing that I think has always been missing, which is giving people actual advice on how to run these games instead of being like, you should have been there during the Google Plus days. Oh, like, I'm so fancy. You weren't in the Forge, Oh, what a shame. You should have been there during Google Plus. That's when, John Harper was just hanging out, shooting the shit with people, and all the rest of us were getting good, Sorry you missed that. I guess you have to suck forever, I guess. Is what it goes like. So I appreciate that they're taking the time to really actually give advice and examples, right? Advice and examples. Those are both important, and they're both important. They're both important that they're in there, but it's nice that they're, good. Now, granted, I mean, you still need to experience is still the best teacher, but yeah, exactly. So it's really nice to have these play-by-play examples and to see them. And again, that's kind of ultimately what I would really love to do one day somehow with all of our games, because we cover things that aren't just PF2 and 5e, is somehow try to entertain people, but also really use it as a way to educate people and show them what I'm doing. It's just tough, when you have a limited budget, limited staff, no production crew. It's a tough process, Critical Role looks great, and they don't do any of that shit. And they've got probably 30 people behind the screen or behind the camera, doing stuff, managing, producing, managing cameras, managing whatever. So, all right, that is going to do it for me. Again, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for everyone who subscribed using Twitch, or maybe if you want to check us out on Patreon, you can join us at patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. You can join our Patreon. That'll give you a link to our private Discord. You can come be part of our crew. That'd be neat. We'd love to see you there. I'd love to see you there. Otherwise, I will catch you next time on Knights of Last Call. That's going to do it for me. Peace out, everybody.